The following program is an LTX Enterprises production. The Falls Count Everywhere podcast would like to mention our friends at the following. The Searcher and Hide podcast, for mind-intriguing discussions about wrestling, movies, Bigfoot, aliens, and everything in between, then look no further than the Searcher and Hide podcast. You can find the Searcher and Hide podcast on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many other platforms. Go check them out today. And Outside the Ring STL, join Shaft, Lucy, General Vader, and others who share their love for professional wrestling as they talk about the recent shows from major wrestling companies, all independent promotions from around the St. Louis area, and even talk about great moments in St. Louis professional wrestling history. Find them on Facebook at Outside the Ring STL. Get ready for episode number 24 of the Falls Count Everywhere podcast, featuring longtime legendary Hall of Fame promoter Herb Simmons. This podcast is scheduled for one episode, where falls count everywhere. We thank all of you tuning into tonight's program here on the Lime Time Podcast Network. Before we officially begin, we pay honor, respect, and salute the greatest nation in the world as we play our national anthem.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for that ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets right glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the
And good evening, everybody. Welcome here to episode number 24 of the Falls Count Everywhere podcast. And we are happy to have you here. Of course, tonight's featured guest, we'll be hearing about a few moments here, which is the one and only Herb Simmons, who is a longtime promoter here in around the Metro St. Louis area. And we are going to be talking with him as our featured guest here of the evening. My name is Rough Cut Rick Ruby, and I'm here to, I thought that for one moment I was going to be alone here, but apparently making his late appearance as usual is the one and only Mr. GQ Matthew Wayne Schuyler III.
I was having some issues, so.
Yeah, well, we know that, but hopefully it was something.
I'm upset. You told me at the beginning of last week that we were going to have the boss in charge of SICW here. Why do we have Herb? I thought it was Mickey.
Mickey?
His wife.
Oh, Lord.
She's the boss, and we all know it.
Oh, no. Well, that's going to be something I guess we could talk about here about it in a little bit. So what's going on? Anything new with GQ within the past week?
Nothing really at all, no.
Nothing really. Well, I'll tell you what. There has been a lot.
I got booked. You know, we can't talk about it yet, but I got booked a couple places. So.
Oh, okay.
See, I'm not a butcher that's going to brag about that all over the place like he should have. But
it's all right because there have been announcements made, and in fact, just to let everybody know that I'm actually going to be getting back in the swing of things. Actually this coming Saturday, back in Mount Vernon. WPW is going to be hosting some TV tapings there, taping a few matches. So if you want to see what happens there. You want to know what immediately happens there, you can go to World Powerhouse Wrestling on Facebook or WPWPro.com and check out Ticket Leap to see if you can reserve a spot to attend the shows. But I will say the one spoiler in that show, it was announced last night that apparently I have a number one contenders match for the United States title against Marcellus Knight. And that was about...
mess it up like he did with the ACW title shot. So, I mean, you know.
No, what are you saying? And besides, that's in controversy anyway. And we're going to get to that here in a minute. But also announced on Outside the Ring STL this evening earlier, hosted by Shaft and Vader, that MMWA is coming back to South Broadway Saturday, April 10th. And we are starting a new bell time 1 hour earlier at 7 p.m. instead. And they're going to keep it that way. And I will say, thank God, because those shows, as much action there is, and a lot of people like to get up and run around on intermission. And we all know about intermission. Nothing's really cut and dry. You know, 15 minutes turns into 30. And then we're like, oh, we better get the rest of the show on the road. And so 7 o'clock new start time. So I assuming doors will open at 6 so people can get in there. And I think there's going to be a limited capacity to that. But follow MMWA Professional Wrestling on Facebook as well for more information. And we can say ACW has an official first booking coming back in 2021 on April 24th at the Elks Lodge in St. Clair, Missouri. And I am talking to the powers that be to see about getting another chance at the ACW Heavyweight Championship because there's too much controversy going around that. I just think that on my own, you know, in my opinion, there's a little bit more controversy than needs to be. All I just need is one more shot. Trust me. And then after that, that's all I need. So I don't know why I put on you here. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know why either, but you can zoom in on this handsome face anyway.
Oh, sorry. No,
But you know what? We got all those shows and everything fine and dandy, but we need to find out about SICW now.
Yeah, we would do. We want to get about an SICW here, and we'll go ahead and get our ticker on here in just a moment.
Let me take this thing off first. There. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. All right. And also, like I said, our listener lines will be open. Okay. Like I said, just make sure that we're going to be focused on our guest of honor this evening. Please stay on the subject for that out of respect to the guest. All right. And with that being said here, we are going to go ahead and get our
target towards anybody. I'm just wondering. Anyway, let's moving on.
Oh my gosh!
Is there a village that needs its idiot back?
Oh, we hope.
He's watching women's volleyball right now. Is what he's doing. Or at least he should be.
All right. So our featured guest of the evening has had a career in the professional wrestling business that covers 6 decades. He's worked with many legends of the sport that goes all the way back to the St. Louis Wrestling Club era, all the way up to working with wrestlers of today. He currently works with USA Championship Wrestling based out of Tennessee and is a longtime owner and promoter of Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling based out of East Boston. Tonight he's with us to talk about the high points of his storied career. Falls Count Evermore Nation, put your hands together for one and only Herb Simmons.
Here, I'll hit the button for him. There you go.
There you go. Herb, how you doing tonight?
Welcome, guys. I appreciate the invite. It's an honor to be here with you, gentlemen, doing what you do best, and that's helping keep the tradition and history of what we all love dearly, and that's professional wrestling alive in the Midwest.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely what I want to try and do, and like I said, I want to showcase guys that are more and more the independent scene, because like I said, I just wanted, when I first started doing this about 11 years ago, of course I hit the mainstreams, and even I do some news bits here and there, but I mainly want to target the guys who run that are not in the mainstream, the guys that are still trying to make names for themselves in this business, and and then of course those that need the proper recognition, and that's most deservingly that's why you're on here tonight. So, but definitely thank you for joining us, and so we're going to definitely. I mean, there's a lot that you've done. What is it? Is it 47 or 48 years that you started in the business?
This month's 47 years, and I'd like to just for GQ had made a comment about the boss being on air. Boy, he's right on target. The only thing is I always control the household, and I wear the pants of the family. She just tells me what pair to wear and how to put them on. But Mickey appreciates that, GQ, really.
Oh, that's the first one I'll actually go up there to say hi to before, whenever I walk into one of your shows and all that is her, because I know who the boss is, and who to be nice to.
Tell her she's the boss with the sauce.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. So we got some. We definitely got some folks in here. And like I said, I did check. All 3 of our feeds are working, by the way, GQ, because I've actually got Twitch going on another. So Twitch is actually broadcasting, but for some reason they don't want to save my shows on Twitch, so forget them. But anyway, for those who would like to give us a ring, like I said, our lines has not changed. If you've listened to us over and over, 314-764-5540. That's our listener line. If you'd like to call and make a comment, we do have that up and running as we speak. But I want to go ahead and get into our interview here for the evening, and I've actually got let's see, the first question here, and I know that Herb, we'll definitely get into the wrestling, but what I want to know, before even wrestling was a thought, and even if it was a thought, did you have other intentions to do something else as a career or hobby before you got involved with wrestling?
No, I became a fan just like all of us did at an early age. Growing up at home, my mother was an avid fan of the old wrestling at the Chase days, and it just kind of, she passed it to me, and I remember sitting around watching wrestling at the Chase back in the days of Joe Gary Joel when he first started, back when some people don't even remember when wrestling at the Chase was on a Wednesday night. That's how long ago that was. Joe Gary Joel was the first play-by-play announcer, started in 1959, May of 1959, in fact. But I just got hooked on it, and just really loved it. And then as the life went on, it just developed from there. And it's just, I've never been a worker, never claimed to be a worker like you guys, but Sam Muchnick wasn't a worker either. Larry Matysik wasn't a worker. So you don't have to be a worker to be a promoter. And that's one thing I think that people like myself my dear late friend, Tony Costa, was not only a great promoter, but was a great worker. And, we all miss him dearly. And he had a mind for the business. And when you put his mind and my mind together, and then when we always had Larry Matysik in the back, it was a force to be reckoned with.
Yep, exactly.
Larry is somebody that'll never be duplicated. 100% truth on that.
Absolutely. GQ gets to start a little earlier in the questionnaire.
So Herb, when did you start your interest in wrestling, and how did you get your chance to get into the business?
It's around the 73, 74 is when I, started really promoting. Like I said, I as a fan, I just was intrigued with the old style that was going on then, that I'm still now. Everybody says I'm old school, and I'm proud of it. I fly that flag every chance I get. Nothing against the new stuff. The guys out there and the girls doing their thing nowadays, they're doing what their dream is. And I tell them all the time, chase that dream. And if you can continue to chase it, you'll catch it. And there's been a lot of them that have, and there's still a lot of new ones out there that will, if they have the intestinal fortitude to do that. But growing up, when you watched it and you watch guys like Johnny Valentine and Big Thunder, Gene Kaniski, the Mongolian Stomper, Gypsy Joe, Tojo Yamamoto. The intriguing part of that is the people that I grew up watching, because not only was I watching the wrestling at the Chase from here, we used to get it from the Marigold Gardens out of Chicago, the Chicago wrestling, people like Moose Showlock, Wilbur Schneider, who was big here in St. Louis, and then of course Dick the Bruiser, who was big everywhere he went, but he ran his operation in Indianapolis and Indiana, places like that. The intriguing part of that is all these people that I grew up with watching on television every week. Later on in life, I got to work with all of them, either booking them, having them on shows, or even as they got older, having them in for personal signings and things like that. So that was kind of like a dream come true. Here I'm one year I'm sitting there at a candy shop, basically. And then it seemed like at the blink of the eye, I'm booking people like Gene Kaniski, or I'm sitting in the office at St. Louis with Sam Muchnick and Larry Matysik, with Whipper Billy Watson and Lou Thez. Lou Thez never wrestled for me, but he did a lot of special guest referee jobs for me. So, wrestling is always been my pastime, where a lot of people wanted to chase the baseball, the football, the hockey, and not that I'm not against that. I like it, but the professional wrestling has always been my passion.
So, what was your first role or job that you had in the business?
The first role, I started attending matches at a young age that we got to go to. Growing up in a housing project, you had to rub two nickels together to make the dime. And so Mom would always save the money. Used to be a place in East St. Louis, Illinois, called the Social Center. That was the first place I ever saw Cowboy Bob Ellis in action, and Pat O'Connor. And that was a treat to go down there. They used to run weekly shows there for many, many years. In fact, up until just a few years back, the original building was still there. It got tore down eventually, but spent weekends down there when we could afford to go. Had a great time. My mom would get mad at people like Fritz von Erich, she despised. Wrestling was so different back then, as you guys have found out over the years. You left out of there really wanting more for a good reason. The guys that were doing it then, that's when everybody says now, well, when will wrestling at the Chase ever come back? Well, I got news for you. Wrestling at the Chase will never come back because, one, the people who made it possible, made it believable, aren't there anymore. And that starts at the top of the helm of Sam Muchnick. And then all the other guys that contributed to the blood, sweat, and the tears aren't with us anymore. There's a few left. Baron Von Roschke, Ted DiBiase, Jerry Briscoe, guys like that, Terry Funk, Dory Funk. And they'll tell you, it can never come back. Doesn't mean wrestling's dead. It just means that the old style that I grew up on is not there. But that's why I try my best to try to keep that era of that time there. But to answer your question, yeah, Social Center in East St. Louis. That's where a lot of the guys, when they were in town, like I said, Cowboy Bob Ellis, Pat O'Connor, Luthez, guys like that made appearances there that we go see.
Awesome. So not soon after that, I believe is when your promotion was starting to come into the fold. So if you could kind of tell us a story on how Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling got started, about how the promotion got built up. And if you can, where was your first show, and do you know about how many people you drew on that first show?
So, at that time, Tony Costa and the South Broadway Athletic Club, I don't know how much of the history you know about South Broadway, but it's been around a long, long time. Wrestling was back there in the days way before any of us was around. They were running shows over the people from there running shows over in a place called Danny Bob's over on the Illinois side. I don't know if either one of you remember that, but they had guys like Bull Brannigan, Insane Hussein, Big Daddy was Roger Bailey was wrestling at that time, the Giant Assassin, and a guy named Rick Fury, who people, when they would see a poster that they were putting out, thought it was Ric Flair. And that would be the buzz around town that, oh my gosh, Ric Flair's coming to Granite City, Illinois. And of course, I, being friends with Larry, knew that wasn't the case. But we would start showing up over there. And then I brought a gentleman to help out, Tony, a guy that was a look-alike off of Jerry the King Lawler. His name was Gary Lawler, out of Southern Illinois, who was spitting images of Jerry. And I hooked him up with Tony. We started using him, had good feuds with him and Bull Brannigan, cage matches, you name it. He threw the fire like Jerry did. And it just kind of mushroomed from there. Then I started running shows at the Belle Claire Fairgrounds in Belleville, Illinois. And the only night that we could get in there was on a Thursday night, because that building was always booked up with flea markets and concerts. They used to have roller skates in there because it's 55,000 square foot building, sits on 27 acres of ground. So it was a perfect location for wrestling. When I started running the wrestling shows there, they had amateur boxing in there. And so they started letting me run opposite the boxing. And, I don't know how much you know about boxing, but it's a different kind of crowd than what wrestling fans are. Mm-hmm. And so we ran head to head for about a year, and they're opposite. They was running one week, I was running the other week, and we actually stole their boxing fans away from them out of that place because we were bringing in people like the Stomper, Tojo, Gypsy Joe, Frank Morrell, the Angel, Bill Ash, who probably has made at least one pair of boots for every person who's ever laced up a boot. Bill Ash's company. But then I had the South Broadway guys who's in there with us. Tony would always make sure that I had adequate staff from there. And then wasn't too long after that, Larry would always show up at our shows, and I'll never forget the night. And we were drawing good people. I mean, there was nights we were putting 1,000 people in that building. And I remember the night Larry said, hey, what would you think about bringing Brody in here? And I remember turning around, looking at him. I said, he'd never come to Belleville, Illinois. And I always wanted to run the weekends up there, but we could never get a weekend night. It always had to be a Thursday night. But boy, we did great on Thursday nights. And that Thursday when Larry mentioned Brody, it was a few days after that, I get a phone call and Larry says, hey, Frank's on board. He says, give him a call and work out the financial arrangements. And I got to tell you, I had heard all the horror stories about Bruiser Brody, how he stiffed people, promoters, how he no-show. And so I called Larry back after I made the deal with him. And I said, now look, I've heard all these rumors from the Bruiser. The Bruiser told me how he screwed them over. And Larry'd say, yeah, but there was another side of the story. And of course I got the story of that. And, but that was the turning point for SICW. At that time, Brody, Frank Goodish, was bigger than life. He was on television. I mean, and I don't know if any of you's ever done a lot of studying on him, but very intelligent individual, smart about the business, and probably the biggest independent out there, that he'd work for whoever he wanted to, whenever he wanted to, and he could get by with it because he put the butts in the seats.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I bet.
And I'll tell you one quick story. Tony Costa, and I can't talk about wrestling without talking about Tony Costa. And he, on several different occasions, wanted to bring Brody to South Broadway. I thought he'd come. And this is the kind of guy Brody was. Out of all the bad things you may have heard. So Tony and I would talk, and he'd say, hey, let's, because we, from time to time, we'd bring some of the legends over there. Von Roschke, Harley was there. But he'd say, why don't we bring Frank over to the club? And, Tony never had problems of selling that place out. I can tell you the talent there and with his promotional stuff. So I would call Frank and I'd say, hey, Tony wants to bring you over to the club. And Frank would say, Herb, you keep telling me you're selling that place out over there. Why do you want to spend the money? Book me in the places that you're having drawing problems. But, he could have easily took our money and ran with it. But that's the type of guy he was. And that's why Bruiser Brody never appeared at South Broadway Athletic Club, because he felt like he would be ripping Tony and I off. And I always admired him for that. There's not another guy out there that I know of that at that time, that drawing power, they'd have took the money and they wouldn't have cared if it just sold one extra ticket. But I think that spoke a lot for the character of Bruiser Brody.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. With you're trying to, after you got your first show put on, and I'm sure that many shows obviously you were talking about followed after that. Whenever you got going, was there like a list of wrestlers that were on your regular roster that anybody would know of? Or even if not, I mean, what were the guys that you usually depended on when you first got started?
Well, like I said, we used a lot of the guys that was at South Broadway. Tony and I would switch guys back. I had guys from the Nashville area that Bill Ash was, his group was helping me with, and Tojo did a lot of work sending me guys up. Like I said, we had, speaking of Tony again, Costa, in fact, I'm almost sure that his lovely wife, Wanda, who I just dearly love to death and grieve every day with her on the loss of Tony, but Tony Costa probably worked, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tojo Yamamoto, but was a big guy in the Nashville business and in Memphis, and carried a bamboo stick. And I used to work Tony Costa against Tojo Yamamoto when we were running 4 or 5 nights a week, everything from southern Missouri all the way up to the Indiana border, in all those towns. And it seemed like Tony had the luck of the draw each night against Tojo. And they put on a show like you wouldn't believe. And he felt the wrath of that Tojo Yamamoto's bamboo stick every night and have whelps all over him. And I remember Wanda just getting really aggravated because back then, that was those guys from Nashville, and that was hardcore stuff. And they brought it up here to Southern Illinois. And I keep telling Tony, let me switch you out, and we had the Giant Assassin, we had Rob Phillips, the guys were at South Broadway back in the day, Chris Guyson, Jason Reeves, Moose Miller, who was a St. Louis police officer, was one of our workers, Butcher Savicio, who made several appearances on wrestling at the Chase. Jason Reeves was on wrestling at the Chase. So those were the guys and that we used. And then again, we swapped off with those promotions. Spike Huber started bringing in guys for me that we used from up in Dick the Bruiser when I made an arrangements with him, which was a whole nother story. Him and I didn't get along at first, but he realized that I wasn't going to roll over and play dead in Southern Illinois because he used to run all the towns that I took over as far as Fairfield, Illinois, and El Dorado, Illinois, and Carmi, Illinois. And he wanted to work together, and he wanted to work a 90-10% deal. And for some reason, I thought it should have been the other way, and it turned out to be that way.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah.
Do you actually remember who your first SICW champion was?
Yeah.
Back then we didn't really focus on that as much as everybody does now. Champions are champions, and I think that I'd have to stop and thank you guys. It's 47 years ago, and I mean, when you're running a circuit, and that's kind of what we did 4 or 5 nights a week. I had the car that had the most miles on it was a 1977 Lincoln Continental, and Tony Costa and I and Larry Matysik before that put a lot of miles on it. And I had when you think back, man, if I stopped and think, there's probably some stories I don't want to remember because it was a tough, and you guys have been out on the road a little bit. But back then, being the promoter, I had a guy that was he was the ring announcer, and he was my front guy that would go out and book those towns for me in advance and do the pre-sales. And I'd always send him into those towns, a week or two ahead of time just to see what advanced sales would be. And we had some bad ones. Rolla, Missouri was a bad one, and I had heavy talent on that. I had Bruiser Brody, I had Spike Huber, I had the group from Nashville. And that whole week before, he's telling me how it's going to be a sellout. We were doing it for the local police department fundraiser, and we get there, and the minute I rolled into town, I knew we were in trouble because there was no signs posted anywhere. No posters in any of the gas stations or the convenience stores. And I'm thinking, so I'm calling Skip and saying, what are we looking like? And we ended up with 35 people in the audience. It was so bad. I didn't even let Brody and Spike go on that night. I sent them back to St. Louis. And so there was nights like that. So I know when guys have those type of shows nowadays, I know how they feel. But to the first champion, I mean, Ron Powers. Then when we started focusing more on, trying to identify that core group of individuals. One thing I think, and you guys may disagree with me, but some guys nowadays get hung up on these titles. And please just somebody tell me what that means as far as what goes in your pocket. You know what I mean?
Not really.
No. And again, I don't want to get into, but if I had this conversation the other night, I want somebody to tell me, if you had to tell me right now who's making a living doing what we're doing in the business right now, being independent. And I don't like the word independent. I made that clear on other podcasts because I don't know of one state that has a license requirement that says that you're an independent wrestler. It says you're a professional wrestler usually. And so I try to stay away from the word independent because the guys in the SICW locker room and the guys in the MMWA locker room or whatever group they're with, the ABC group, I don't care. They're out there busting their butts. They're lacing them boots up, the men and women, and they're going out there doing what they're able to do. Does some do it better than others? Yeah. Some ball players play better than others. But they're wrestlers. The word independent is just something that got thrown out there many, many years ago, and it's just a moniker that's hung around on everybody. And I think it's a disgrace. I think it takes away from what the men and women are out there doing in the business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as, with that word, I mean, I can understand as far as not trying to degrade it all, but you're not in the, in the top tier where you're in TV production every week, but also in the main, we can't really use the word territories anymore. I mean, because, back when territories meant something, I guess, I don't know, territorial wrestler doesn't have a good ring to it, but yeah, professional.
Well, and that's what I mean. You're either a wrestler or you're not a wrestler.
Right.
Yeah,
I totally get it.
I mean, the sport is called professional wrestling. And there's been people over the years say, well, it's the minor league of this or the minor league or that. But, when you go out there and when you got hit with a chair from the likes of a Bruiser Brody or a Ron Powers or a rough cut Rick Ruby, you're getting hit with a chair. Just because that word independent professional, it's still going to hurt just the same as if you're an independent or if you're in the mainstream. I don't care what it is. And again, I am really partial to what the men and women go out there and do every day. And I don't care what federation they're with. If you stop and think about it, it's every letter of the alphabet. There's some group out there, SICW, MMWA, ABC wrestling organization. It's all wrestling. It's just like I said, some people do it better than others. Some people take it more serious. Some people like the newer version of it. I'm old school, and I'll die being old school. I just that's what I grew up on. That's what Larry and Sam. There's not too many people that can tell you that they got to sit around and talk with Sam Muchnick, who was the godfather. He controlled the NWA for over 41 years. And I'm not bragging about that. It's just fact. I remember the night he told me sitting at the Fairmount Park racetrack with Larry Matysik eating a steak. My first time, he said, you keep these open and this shut, you go a long way in this business. And here I am 47 years later. And so it worked. I have not regretted anything I've done in the professional wrestling business. Have I made people mad? Yeah, it pissed a lot of people off, but I am not going to roll over and play dead. And that's one thing Sam and Larry also said. If you build something like this, you got to be able to protect it. And that's what I think that I've got to do. And not only am I protecting what I built, and it's nothing. It's, probably 50 cents and a cup of coffee if you look at it on paper. But the guys who went out there and busted their asses for little or nothing, chasing their dream, they are the ones that build SICW. They're the ones that's building MWA, and they're the ones that's building all these groups out there. So my hat's off to all of you guys. I'm telling you, it's tough. I know other promoters, Scotty Z down at New Breed Wrestling. If you don't think a guy like him wouldn't want to pay the talent more, Bert Prentice, my dear friend down at USA Championship Wrestling, that runs almost 6-7 nights a week. I don't know of any other promotion that's out there running more than USA Championship Wrestling is. You got to have the fans, you got to have the butts in the seats. And you got to have guys who want to do it the right way. And I won't mention name, but I had a guy call me and say, "Hey, do I need insurance?" I said, "What?" He said, "Well, yeah, I'm getting mixed feelings or mixed messages from people saying that, I'm going to start running these shows and it's in another state." He said, "But do I need to get insurance? I've had some people tell me I don't." I said, "Let me tell you something. You are the biggest fool ever that walked if you try to promote a show and don't have insurance."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know, but I know for a fact there's people out there do that. I mean, I've had organizations call me and say, "Hey, I can't find insurance. Can I work a deal with you?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, I need to have insurance because some school or some building is requiring me to have it." And I've worked with them, and that's what I said before we went on the air. There's nobody out there today that's worked with other promotions more than Herb Simmons and Tony Costa had. We helped other promotions. My good friend Ken Murphy down at Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Somebody can call him, ask him. He wanted to run a show. He called Herb Simmons. He came up, looked at one of our shows. I took Terry Funk down there for him. I took Bob Orton down there for him. I didn't get nothing for that. I did it because he's my friend. He needed help, and I did it. So when somebody says that, well, Herb Simmons protects SICW, you're dang right I'm going to protect SICW, because when I'm protecting SICW, I'm protecting the men and women that go out there and bust their butts each and every show we put on.
Yeah, absolutely. GQ, you're up.
Yeah. So with all the major names that you've mentioned and you've worked with throughout your time in the professional wrestling business, who were some of the wrestlers that you had the best working relationships or friendships with?
I'm going to tell you, Bruiser Brody, the guy, when this COVID thing gets behind us, which has had us all just in a turmoil, I'll invite you guys over one day. And this guy meant a lot to me, meant a lot to Larry Matysik. He's right up, he's got to be there. But, when you look at the list, and I tell this all the time, I was a young guy at the right place at the right time. Had I not met Larry Matysik and Sam Muchnick, there would be no SICW. There'd be no Herb Simmons sitting here tonight talking to two of you guys who I respect and admire for what you're doing. Those guys put me in touch with the right people. And I think that's all because they saw something in me. They knew they could trust me with the bit. I mean, stop and think about it. I have people telling me you ought to write a book. Well, I'm helping a guy now do a Wrestling at the Chase book. And I could. I mean, the stories that I could tell about sitting in the office and listening to Sam and Gene Kaniski, and like I said, Whipper Billy Watson, Johnny Valentine, and just sitting over there, I was all like, man, my ears were big. They were open. But there were some things that I probably didn't want to hear and probably shouldn't have heard, but they'll go to the grave with me. But there's nobody that had that opportunity like I had, and I took it. And Larry always told me, he said, "You're along for the ride and enjoy every bit of it." Up until the day he left us, we were talking wrestling. That guy had a mind out of this world. So, Sam, Larry, Frank, Lou Thez, like I said, never wrestled, but refereed some matches. I mean, I got to sit in the Belle Claire Fairgrounds one afternoon before a show. Larry and I was the only ones in the building other than Bruiser Brody and Lou Thez. And they got in the ring and was working out. They were doing not the only, because there was some Japan photographers that came over. They were shooting an angle in Japan, and they wanted to get some good video and photos of Frank and Lou working. But Larry and I, kids at a candy shop, I mean, just the things that Lou did to Bruiser Brody in that ring. I'll never forget after it was over with, Lou goes back to the dressing room and takes an aluminum folding chair and puts it up against the wall 160 push-ups off of that after he'd been out there in the ring with Brody for about an hour. And I never forget Brody. Lou went back to dress out, and Larry asked him, he said, "So how was it in there with the old man?" And he said, "Let me tell you something." He says, "When that old man grabs your arm, you're going anywhere he wants you to go." And it was tough. And I mean, so things like that just sticks with me forever. Those were lifetime experiences, you know. Dick the Bruiser, I told you earlier, him and I, our first encounter wasn't a good one. He wanted to come back in. He had left Southern Illinois from running those towns that I had mentioned, and he wanted to come back in there when I started running them. And again, he had left open territory, you know. I was getting calls from organizations, because that's what we do primarily, is fundraisers for nonprofit organizations, whether it be the fire departments, police departments, Lions clubs, JC clubs, or whatever that needed help raising funds. We would go in and help them. And I was doing that. And then when he found out that we were serious about running, and he found out because I had got invited to go to the Kiel Auditorium one night and meet with Harley Race, Bulldog Bob Brown, and Pat O'Connor, and was a unique night. And again, it was more of a hey, you're running in our territory and you shouldn't be running. And of course, they weren't running over in Illinois, and I wasn't too interested in running in the areas that they were running in outside of St. Louis. When they would go to Kansas, or they go up to St. Joe's, I wasn't interested in those towns. But we come to an agreement. But then when the Bruiser thought that I was running in his Southern Illinois area, I mean, I never crossed over into Indiana. You know, I could have over into Evansville, but you know, that was always run from the Memphis group. So I never did do that. You mentioned the territorial days. It would be nice to have territorial days now, but there's nobody here knows how to do territories. Guys nowadays thinks territories mean that you run here tonight on a Saturday night, and then next week you run 5 minutes away from where you run a week ago. That's not territorial. You know, territorial is where I run you here this weekend, and we run for 6 months to a year in this area, and then I pick up the phone and call Ruby and say, "Hey, you're in Texas. I'm going to send GQ down there to you for the next 6 months or a year. And then I'm going to send you up to Stu Hart's in Canada for 6 months or a year." That's territorial work. You know, one time there was almost, I think, 40 some different territorials groups throughout the country. But nowadays guys think that it's okay to, and I want somebody to explain to me how that works too. How do I work Mr. Ruby here, and I'm giving him a push as my big heel, and he's going through everybody I put in front of him for a period of weeks or months or whatever it may be, but then the ABC promotion has him 10 minutes away and they're killing him, and we have a crossover of fans. Doesn't work. That's the psychology of knowing how to do booking. Now, he might say, okay, I'm getting paid to work here and I'm getting paid to work here, but they're not thinking longevity. They're thinking about going out there doing that 1 5-minute match every week or whatever it may be, or 10-minute match. So it's all in what your perspective is. Do you want to be in a professional business and try to make it work for not just you, but for the good of the business?
And that waters down the person as well. I mean, that if everybody's seeing him, it's not going to. Nobody's going to want to see him do this down the line again on the next show or anything like that. They've already seen him 5 times in the last 2 weeks elsewhere. So it's like, why bother, you know?
Exactly. You know, and I know you've done a lot of work for a good friend, Frank Reed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Frank used to come to the Belle Claire Fair, and he probably told you this story before. I know he's told other guys his work. He used to come to my shows at the Belle Claire Fairgrounds and sit in the front row, and he'd bring 20, 25 people with him every month that I had a show there. And you know one thing about Frank Reed? If Frank would have found him a home and put some foundation down and put some brick and mortar down somewhere, you wanted to talk about a force to be reckoned with. But and I've told Frank this myself, where Frank made his mistake is hopping around like a bunny rabbit. You can't do that and get any stability. And I love Frank. I mean, Frank and I, we talk periodically, but again, I just think that had he had just found him a building and stayed there. If he built it, they'll come to it. And I think SICW is living proof of that. We are off the beaten path more than anybody. We're not over at 7th and Shenandoah in downtown St. Louis in the Soulard Market area where there's traffic by the tons every day going past there. Location destination is not always the case in this. I say it's like baking a cake. If you got the right ingredients, it's going to rise. It's going to be good. You got to have a good location sometimes. Could be good or bad, but you got to have a good locker room and you got to have great fans. And if you got all three of that combination, then you're going to be pretty good at promoting it. You don't have to be a worker to be a promoter, as I said. But if you don't have a good talent that wants to give the best, I mean, who are we trying to please there? We're trying to please the fans, because without the fans, look what's going on now. I mean, can any of you sit and watch wrestling on TV when they don't have fans in the audience?
Nope.
No, it's ridiculous. It's the most stupidest thing I've ever. I don't do it, but I've had people tell me, I can't get into it. I'm glad I don't even try, because I couldn't do it, because those fans give the energy to you guys in there. That Rough Cut. You're sitting there trying to do something and no fans are sitting there. What am I doing? It's ridiculous. So without fans, I'm telling you, might as well turn the lights off. The party's over.
And that's the thing with WWE. What they're doing with that is pumping like pre-recorded crowd responses and everything, which doesn't give you like the correct response, which is how the crowd's actually reacting to it. They're just playing how they want to push you, but hell, the crowd could be, pissing all over it and not even knowing it, and they're still pushing somebody that you're losing business in the long run on it.
Well, and you're right, totally. And again, you gotta, the fans have got to be into it, and I tell guys all the time, if you listen to the crowd, you'll develop your own style, your own shtick. I think some of the guys and gals now, they're too worried about, they want to develop their character. Well, before you develop a character, you got to have the basics. You got to know the psychology of what you got to go out there. And once you get that, once you come into your own, Bob Orton tells them the same time over at the Ace Wrestling Academy when it's up and running, just let's find what you're going to do. Get in there and learn how to do the simple takedowns and the headlocks and the hip tosses and how to run their, some of these guys don't even know how to run the ropes. So I think that they try, but, it's one thing to try, but then when you go out there in front of an audience and when you make those mistakes and you turn around and that's what they call a cardinal sin, when you make that same mistake twice in the same match. Nobody's even taught them that. So again, we can talk about that all day long, but you mentioned the list of names. I've had the opportunity of doing some very unique shows at the only show ever produced at the Fox Theater. Larry and I did that with Sam Muchnick. In fact, the cover of the Wrestling at the Chase book that Larry wrote was the picture of Bruiser Brody and Sam Muchnick holding the trophy cup that we presented to the winner that night. And the story about that is that trophy isn't, and I don't want to tell you what it is because it's going to be in the book that's coming out. But that's not and somebody may have heard it because I told it a couple of times before, but we forgot to get the trophy until the night before the match, and we had to substitute something for a trophy. It's wrestling, you know how it works. You ad lib. Uh, Sam was not happy with Larry or I, and but Brody saved us the night before when we took him to tour the Fox Theater. But that card there, we had Gentleman Chris Adams on it. We had Crusher Blackwell, Kamala the Ugandan Giant, the Fantastic Tommy Rogers, and Bobby Fulton. The Midgets was on that card. The Girls was on that card. Ron Powers was on there. The Giant Assassin. So all-star card. And like I said, the other unique part about that is everybody who performed at the Fox Theater, whether it was the Four Tops or the music groups or the Red Skelton, whoever, over the years, everybody signed their name on the green walls in the back. And so here you had W.C. Fields and all these major stars, and then you'd see Bruiser Brody, Larry Matysik, Herb Simmons, and Crusher Blackwell. So, and I'm sure that's all been painted over by now, but just to be able to say that you were there to do that was pretty unique.
Yeah. So, I've heard about a show or two at the Fox, and that's definitely a sight to behold. Knowing that I've been inside the Fox Theater and seeing how they're staged and how everything is presented.
Well, and what they actually had to do, they raised the orchestra pit up as where we put the ring at. Because when we first talked about it, where are we going to put the ring at? With the way the Fox is set up, and they actually came up with that. And of course, we had to make sure the engineers got in there and make sure the ring would hold. It would hold the ring up and everything, and it did. But that, and then we done several shows at the Fairmont Park Racetrack where we had Bruiser Brody against Ox Baker, and one of those. Another one was Bruiser Brody against Nard the Barbarian. That card we had Gypsy Joe and Tojo, and in fact, there's a picture out there of Bruiser Brody that when he's got the jockey on his back. I don't know if you've seen that, racing the horse down the racetrack. That was Brody's idea. Brody was always good about coming up with something special to promote it. The picture of him standing on the marquee at the St. Louis Checkerdome where he's holding the letter in his hand when he had the girl Angie. In fact, she's Angie, the girl that he's holding in his arms there, because that's the story. And you've probably heard all these stories. Why was he called King Kong Brody here in St. Louis, and he was called Bruiser Brody elsewhere, whether it be in Texas or whether it be up in Chicago or Indianapolis where he was. And again, over the years when fans, I used to argue with them, say, no, that's not right. And then they want to argue. I say, okay. I finally, after all these years, I tell them, I say, okay, it's your story. You believe what you want, tell it the way you want it. It's the story of that is there was Dick the Bruiser at the same time, and there was Bruiser Bob Sweetan at the same time in the area of wrestling at the Chase. And Sam didn't want to have another Bruiser, so they called him King Kong Brody, is the reason why that was. And he came up with the idea that, hey, let's do the King Kong thing, and I'll be standing up on the building. So that's how that worked out. It was the same way people say, well, man, I used to go see Andre the Giant at wrestling at the Chase. And I used to tell people, no, Andre never wrestled at the Chase. Oh, yeah, I saw him wrestling at the Chase. No, the closest Andre ever got to wrestling at the Chase is when they would show clips of him when they may be bringing him to the Keel or to the Checkerdome. But, it got to the point where, hey, it's your story. You tell it the way you want to.
Yeah. So moving to a different venue, and we're just kind of give a rundown here. And I just want to kind of present some facts. Just as because we're going to be moving to the Chase, wrestling at the Chase history, of course, that all stemmed from the St. Louis Wrestling Club. It was basically Sam Munchin's creation with Harold Koplar, on the airplane in '58, and of course it debuted on KPLR on May 23rd, 1959, and ran all the way through September 10th, 1983. And apparently it was a live to tape format, which basically is. They just run it all the way through, and then of course, not to break for commercial, or they just run it, and then in the '70s they started doing multiple shows on one night, Um, but from what I heard is looking at this is that Bob Geigel, who owned the Central States territory, because whenever Sam was in there with the St. Louis Wrestling Club, it was actually the St. Louis chapter of the NWA, and then Bob Geigel, who owns Central States, had actually purchased the St. Louis Wrestling Club in '82, and apparently, well, here's how I want to get a take on that, because apparently, from what I've heard, and I don't know how true it is, because you're, of course, were very close to Larry. How did that go over? Because, like I said, because you're looking a bit between '82 and '83, and Larry and Bob did not really see eye to eye on how things should have been as far as promoting matches there.
That's correct.
Okay. So
Sam,
you know exactly what could have happened? Whose ideas were kind of bad? What did Larry have that Bob didn't? What did Bob have that Larry didn't like?
There were several things. Sam had at one time picked Larry to be his successor because he groomed Larry. Larry. The only job Larry ever had full time was with Sam Muchnick. He may have had a little nickel and dime job here, but it never lasted because he was so intrigued with the wrestling business. When he went off to college, he moved back home because he couldn't keep making the trip back and forth to get here for the Friday night fights and the matches. He was obsessed with wrestling, kind of like what I said I was growing up. And Sam, he got his first paycheck from Sam when he was 16 years old. And
Herb, you still with me? I wonder if he got frozen. GQ?
Yeah, it's frozen for me though too. So
yeah, I think you might have got frozen on the feed. Let me just see.
There you go. You there?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There we go.
Yay.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. Be on the ball a little bit more there.
A little magic there, I'll tell you. But there you go. Everything okay?
Yeah.
Good. So I'm trying to think. You scared me there when you went off. I thought you guys got mad and left me. But the Larry and Sam had wanted Larry to take over because he had been grooming that for many years. In fact, some of the guys that are still with us now, like I said, Jerry Briscoe and Dory Funk and people like that, all said that they thought that's what was going to take place. But you had Bob Geigel and Harley Race, because Harley had a part of the business also. And I think that's what I can't talk a whole bunch about it because this new book that's coming out that Ed Wheatley is writing, that I'm helping him with, is going to tell the entire story of wrestling at the Chase. Some of what you just mentioned about back, and the book is even going to go back before that with the Tom Pax days and Lou Thez, because Lou Thez at one time was the promotion. So it's going to be a very in-depth, loaded with, it's going to be what they call a coffee table book. It's going to have probably a couple of 100 pictures in it that I'm providing to him along with some other people. Of course, I've got quite a collection that Ed has come over, and I've got all the records from wrestling at the Chase. If Rough Cut Rick Ruby wrestled at the Chase or wrestled at Kiel Auditorium or at the Checker Dome, and if you wrestled there in 1960, let's say, and you had, and through 1960, you were in St. Louis 12 times on television at the Kiel, and you went against GQ on January 1st, 1960. I've got them all printed on, they're all 3x5 cards that they typed on a typewriter of every match. If you beat him with a splash or you beat him with a submission hold, it's got that listed on there. And I've got all those records. Anybody who ever wrestled there. And those were passed down from Sam to Larry to me. Just like the videos that we have that Larry and I reproduced, those are all the Wrestling at the Chase classic tapes that we did. And I've still got about another 100 hours of those left that we called our B-roll. which may be matches like Roger Kirby against a Bulldog Bob Brown. When we put those classic matches together, Larry wanted to make sure we had the cream of the crops, like when David Von Erich took on Harley Race, or Dick the Bruiser took on Ric Flair. And then when we had our television show on Charter Cable, I don't know if you guys ever saw them, but we would take our local guys who were out there busting butt and doing everything. Then each week we would throw in one of those classic tapes. So we was catching the demographics of the old and the new. And, I've got right at 650 episodes of the SICW Wrestling Explosion that I have. And to add to that library with the Wrestling at the Chase, I just recently acquired all of the Dick the Bruiser's TV tapes from his organization. I bought from his wife, Mrs. Aflis. So I have all the stuff that him, Guy Mitchell, Angelo Poffo, Moose Sholok, the Valiant Brothers, everybody that worked for the Bruiser, I've got all those tapes now. And they're all on TV reels, or they're right off the TV studio reels. So we're in the process of downloading them and going to be doing something with them here in the near future.
Oh, man, awesome. So
Not just hearing about that.
So other notables, I mean, that's that. So when the run for the Chase ended, I guess it was Larry who actually sold the St. Louis Wrestling Club over to Vince, and then he ran with it for about a couple of years and saw he wasn't making a profit, and then apparently Jim Crockett Promotions bought the club, and then I guess was bringing the NWA syndicated shows over to there in that spot. So throughout the history of the club, and also with Wrestling at the Chase, did you have any involvement? And so, what roles or responsibilities did you have with helping the clubs out?
Let's back up a minute. Larry actually went to work for Vince.
Oh, he did go. Oh, yeah, that's right. He did go to work for Vince.
He went to work for Vince and worked for Vince for 10 years. And,
that's right.
And this isn't nothing that I'm proud of. I'm probably the one that cost him his job for Vince. And we laughed about it later on in life. But it was another way. He taught me a lesson on how to book around Vince McMahon and how to get over on him. Because at that time we were running those shows, Larry was behind the scenes while he was working for Vince. And what I was doing was booking shows for WWF at that time. Larry would call me and say, hey, that's when they were running road shows, and they would run all over the country, and they would set them up in between their house shows that they had. And so I ran the DuPont High School, Collinsville High School, down in Cape Girardeau. I would go out and set those shows up for him. The one that broke the camel's back is that the DuPont High School.
Everybody was kung fu fighting, so
I wanted to know the end of the story is what I'm wanting to know.
Yeah, I think I have an idea where he's going with this story, though, with Dupo. This could have been a fundraiser from the 93 flood, but I just don't know.
I remember that show. I snuck into it. So
also, that's why they drew low. Okay. Everybody was walking in. Well, hopefully we're going to get her back here.
Yeah, but that show was mentioned, though, on Radio WWE.
Oh, hold on a second. Let's take a look and see who this call is.
Hold on.
Hey.
There,
right.
You there?
Hey, real quick, Herb. Sorry about that. We got a caller on the line. Falls Count Everywhere podcast. Who is this?
This is Sean Vincent.
Sean Vincent. How are you doing, man?
They have phones.
Figured I'd call in, be your special guest for the evening. How you doing, Herb?
Fine, sir. How you doing?
Doing just fine. Battling the pandemic just like you, my friend.
Yeah, it's a battle, and we got a little good news over here this today. In fact, our region was the last region in the state that was in mitigation, and we got moved out of that. But basically, what that means is we're into phase 4 now. We're still under some restrictions until we get more needles in people's arms. But that was a big role for us today, and we're vaccinating about 1,000 people a day at our mass vaccination site. So we're keep fighting the fight, and I know you are too.
That's right. Every day, I'm at the hospital on the COVID unit treating patients with the virus. And the good thing is, with this new vaccine out there, we're starting to see the trends of ICU admissions slowly decrease in our area. And hopefully that'll be the same in Illinois too, because
just lost it again, I think.
Well, now we lost Ruby this time.
Yeah, just you and me.
Well, so since we lost him and we also lost the phone call there, finish your story because I want to know a little bit more with those shows in between.
So the WWF at that time, like I said, the Dupo show was the one that actually cost Larry his spot with Vince. And back then, my wife was a member of the school board at the Dupo High School. And of course, it's no secret, I've been the mayor there in East Rondelet for almost 34 years now. And so, in those positions, my wife being on the board, me being the mayor, we're bringing the WWF to town at that time, and they were the biggest thing out there going. Everybody wanted to see the WWF. So I work a deal with the school board with my wife's help. They were a little reluctant, like most schools are, because they got their nice basketball floor that is worth its weight in gold, and they had just had it redone, and so we had to go through all the special stuff, putting tarps down. But Larry had warned me in 47 years now, have only had to cancel, I think, one show in 47 years. So that's a pretty good record. And I've always been conscious about it. One, not wanting to cancel the show and not false billing people who I know is not going to be there. And because a lot of promotions have done that over the years. So Larry had cued me in and said, you're going to have to be careful. So let's keep a real close eye on the advanced sales. And they're advertised. They were Fowler had been accused of some inappropriate stuff. It was that time here. I don't remember the exact year, but I remember that sticking out because that was a topic of conversation that night. I remember the two, Rene Goulet and Tony Gurria was the road agents that were there for that show. And Tony Gurria and I are good friends, and we talk about it all the time. But Larry had told me, he said, now they're going to start calling you like every other day when we get into about 2 weeks out, wanting to know what the advanced ticket sales are. And he had laid out a schedule for me. And so when they started calling me, just like he said, I would tell them, we got $6,000 in advance. A couple of days later, we got $7,500 in advance. And because he said, if you don't show, anywhere between a $15,000 and $20,000 advance sale, he said, they just won't show. They'll just pull the plug on it. And so he had it out to where by the time,
And
okay, we'll be there. Well, they end up showing, and we ended up totally with about a $13,000 house for him. Do I feel bad about doing that? No, because no, Ben spends that in 1 minute. But my reputation was on the line with my fans and my people in my communities, and so it wasn't shortly after that Larry got his pink slip from WWF.
Oh, because of that Dupo show.
Well, it was that, and that happened on a couple of other things of that when I was booking shows for him. But you gotta the real quick story. Then when I told you I was booked at the Belclair Fairgrounds, that was my home turf. Howard Finkel. You guys remember Howard Finkel?
Oh yeah.
So Howard, back, great guy. Loved Howard, but he was always put into peculiar situations by the company. And one of the ones he got to do is they wanted to book the Belclair Fairgrounds to do TV shows on it. And we were running hot and heavy there. Like I said, I had Brody, I had Blackwell, I had Murdoch running in there. Plus, like I said, the guys from Nashville. And we were doing great. And they tried to come in and take that building away from me. And the gentleman who ran the Belclair Fairgrounds, a guy named Glenn Decker, got the phone call, and I'm sitting in the office with him. I had signed I had 2 shows, 2 months more planned. And I was there when the phone call, and it was Howard Finkel, and introduced himself and said what they wanted to do. And Glenn Decker said, we got wrestling here. And Howard said, well, I've been told to tell you that we will fly in a helicopter and land it on your property there and bring in a suitcase full of money, that we need this place to, we want to bring in bleachers, and we want to set up a studio. And he said, you don't understand. I got Herb Simmons and Larry Matysik that runs wrestling shows here. So that just goes to show you there was no stones back there. They weren't going to try to, because we were running hot and heavy. I had some of the hottest talent out there outside of the WWF that anybody could want. And those were guys, Dick Murdoch, Blackwell, people like that. There was television on TV for a long time and had some great feuds. And basically they wanted me out of the business. And it kind of goes to what we were talking about before we went on the air. So that's just another little thing to keep in the back of your mind there, that if you build something, you need to be able to protect it.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have another call here. This is Falls Count Everywhere Podcast 2 is on the line.
It's Herb Simmons. Well, Aaron Wallace, of course.
Oh, hey, Aaron. How you doing?
Doing just fine.
All right.
Is it okay if I ask Herb Simmons a question?
Sure, absolutely. Go right ahead.
Last year we were supposed to have the mystery box, and just tell us who is inside the mystery box.
I don't remember the mystery box that you're talking about. Of course, I'm old and my mind sometimes get foggy, but the last mystery box I remember was an angle that Colonel Buck Robley was in. But that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
All right. And
yeah. I think I know who you're talking about. Oh no, we were going to do the show at the Belclair Fairgrounds, and we were listing each week. We had the different guys. Brian, do you remember who the last? Who was it going to be? Sergeant Slaughter, I think it might have been. That's when we had like 4 or 5 legends coming in. And I think it might have been Slaughter was going to be the last. Oh, no, it was going to be, who was it? Was it Edge or, Matt Hardy. It was going to be Matt Hardy.
Oh, I love Matt Hardy.
Yeah, that was going to be the 5th guy.
He's even younger than me.
Yeah, so that's who it was going to be. But we're going to do that again once this COVID gets cleared up. We had about 32 matches lined up for last year that we didn't get to do, and I felt bad because the nonprofit organizations, the Swansea Fire Department, the Holy Family Church, groups like that count on us helping them raise money. We're gonna get them caught back up, and of course the big one we do every year, Bruiser Brody. We had Spike Huber coming in on that, of course, with Barbara Goodish, as we do every year. But we're going to get this COVID behind us, and I announced a long time ago. Seemed like about a year now. The wife and I said our first show when we open back up is going to be a fan-free night. There won't be no admission charge because the fans have weathered this COVID. I try to do my show on Sunday nights to keep everybody informed of the past, present, and future. I've had some great guests on there, Dr. D, David Schultz, Jerry Briscoe, Terry Funk, Dory Funk, to try to keep the fans interacting. But when we get back, that first show is going to be a fan-free night, and we're gonna tear the roof off of the East Cron Lake Community Center and have a good time.
Yes.
All right, Aaron, I thank you very much for calling in tonight, and take care.
No, thank you.
All right, man. You have a good rest of your night.
Okay.
Thank you. Goodbye.
All right. So, well, awesome. So, excellent, Mr. Vincent, and I will say it is actually my fault and my glitch for cutting him off. So, Sean, hopefully you don't find me where I'm wrestling it and try to ruin one of my matches. But anyway,
I'm not from Canada. It's not going to bother anyway. So.
He asks, will the stipulation against Flash Flanagan being suspended for a year be lifted once SICW returns? That's an excellent question because not much time went into that stipulation before everything got shut down. So your thoughts on that, Herb?
It's a great question, and I can tell you that I don't like Travis Cook. So if it gets left up to me, if it gets left up to my total decision, I think it will because it wasn't Flash's fault that this COVID came along. So there was nothing in the stipulation that says that, well, if something happens, you got to start all over because nobody could predict that. So, I mean, it's something we're going to take a look at. Flash is one of the greats. I mean, as Sean knows, he's been in the ring with him. And, of course, like I said, when you look at the locker room of SICW, the years of experience, Dennis McCausey at Telecon, Flash Flanagan, Ricky Cruz, Sean Vincent, the Big Texan, Bobby D, and the list goes on and on and on of the years of talent. Now, there's probably some people out there saying, yeah, they're a bunch of old has-beens washed up, but I'm going to tell you, it's wrestling, and we know wrestling can be fun. It's like the MMWA locker room. Tony Costa was the Tony Costa that I worked with and loved was a guy that required guys to come in there and do it the right way. And it was no secret over the last few years when his health was failing, he was slipping a little bit on requiring and demanding that same caliber of operation. Not saying it was bad, but it's just that when we get older, I've lost it. And that's why I've got guys like Sean Vincent, and I got guys like Flash Flanagan and Dennis McCausey and Ricky Cruz, and they got to keep the fire lit underneath me every now and then, because as we get older, we lose a step. So the alternative to getting old is not good. So we can't stay young forever. Nobody wants to leave this earth right now. So you have to have help along the way. So what I'm saying is that I'm going to do what's best for SICW with the Flash Flanagan and Travis Cook. Travis is even though I don't like him, he's good for the business. When you have people like Jim Cornette, who's been at our shows, or Jimmy Hart, who's been at our shows, and when they make the statements to people like Larry and myself and Ron Powers, and they say, boy, we are so thankful that Travis Cook wasn't out on the road when we were out there, because we'd have had to step our game up. That says a lot, in GQ, from the role that you play, a good manager can make it or break it.
I'll be the first one to always say that Travis is going to be number one above me, definitely above almost any manager in this area alone.
Well, yeah, and then of course, then we reached back down in our bag of tricks there for a while, and we brought one of the greats out again, and that was Big Daddy, Roger Bailey. I mean, there's a guy that Bruiser Brody begged, said, "Come on, let me take you on the road with me. We'll make big money," and they would. We had some dynamite matches with them all over Illinois and Missouri. But Giant Assassin, Brody loved working the Giant Assassin. Some great matches they had. It's just Ron Powers. I mean, there's a guy that a lot of people don't realize. It done a lot of traveling with WCW, done some WWF stuff. Larry hooked him up, and Ron was one of the tough guys out there. He learned from a lot of it from Frank Bruiser Brody. So you talked earlier about the list of the names that we've had. I've had people say, well, how many of the legends have you brought in over the years? Well, man, I could sit here all night long. And some names you guys may not hear, and some of the fans will probably, or they'll remember them. But and they say, why do you bring in those legends? Why aren't you investing that money in the younger talent? And I say, well, a lot of these guys that I bring in that I've worked with give me a great deal. They're tickled to death. They're happy that I'm keeping the tradition alive. But the guys in the locker room, you bring in a Ricky Steamboat that sits there and takes time and talks to the guys in the locker room. We had him at the Swansea Firehouse, and after the show was over, an hour later, after everybody was gone, the locker room is sitting in the back there with Ricky Steamboat, and he's sitting in the middle, and they're all around him, and he's answering all their questions. Some of them's taking notes. That's an education that you can't get just anywhere. So I will continue to do that. We're losing some of these legends at a too fast of a rate, but a guy like Baron von Raschke, Greg Valentine. These are guys that can sit there and tell stories. And Bob Orton, I mean, you guys know Bob Orton. Take a car ride with Bob Orton. I guarantee you'll come back and you'll be happy as heck, because he's got some great stories, great experiences out there.
And that's the thing, the younger generation cannot survive on just what they have or what they learn alone. They need to listen to everything that's happened with all these legends as well, and learn from that and add it to the repertoire.
Well, and I think that's one thing at the Ace Wrestling Academy that, speaking of Sean Benson, he took that bull by the horn, and Bob Orton being down there. And I joke and tell people, I can always tell when Bob will sit outside the ring on a chair, and the trainers who Sean has had in there helping him, Frankie D, Chris Hargis, Ricky Cruz have been down there helping out. But when Bob would be sitting there, and you knew when something was going on that Bob didn't like, because he'd get up and take them glasses off and climb in the ring, and you'd say, "Oh boy," now we're gonna say a little old school. And I think Sean would tell you that what you want to do when you got them young students in there, you want to push them to their limit. You don't want to give them any false hopes. They got to come in there, and you'll know within a short period of time who's got it and who don't have it. And there's no doubt about it. These older guys that are out there now, you got to make room for the young guys, and I'm all for that. My only concern about that is that when you see some of the stuff that's out there now, it makes your stomach turn. When I see guys doing things that, concussions, trying to jump backwards and landing outside, hitting the ring apron with their head. I mean, there's got to be somebody to tell us if that's wrong. It's not worth it. That few dollars you're going to, if you get a few dollars, you got a day job you got to go to.
If they were learning psychology, they would know that they don't need to go out there to kill themselves to get over, to get the crowd.
Well, and Sean and I have talked about this, and even Bob. I've got all those old classic tapes, and I said, what we ought to require these guys to do is come in there and the first couple of nights of practice, sit here and watch a match of a Pat O'Connor against the Lou Thez or Ric Flair against the Dusty Rhodes. And the older you go back into, unless it's a match of a Fritz von Erich against a Killer Kowalski, which is nothing but a punch, kick, heel type match. But you go in there with a Lou Thez and a Pat O'Connor, no flip flopping, no high spots, just good wrestling, a little rough and tough, and the crowd is on their feet because they know the psychology of it. I mean, I've seen them guys do matches and they don't even use the ropes, but they kept you intrigued. They kept that audience there. And now people say, well, yeah, but this is a new year, Herb. You got to get into the new generation. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to sit there and watch somebody do something I know it's going to hurt them. And I just think that when a guy goes out there, and you don't have to do it for that 30-second spot you're trying to do that you're taking a chance of risking your life on, it's not worth it. It's really not. But I applaud them for wanting to be in the business because a lot of the old guys aren't going to be around, and we got to have a younger generation to get in there. I just wish that they would take the training a little bit more serious than what they're doing. These guys will go out there and say, oh, I've been wrestling for 5 years. Well, who did you train with? Who taught you? Oh, well, so-and-so did. Well, when I get people who call me, I ask them, where did you train? Well, is there any training schools around? Yeah. And back then I'd say Harley Race has got one of the greatest, Dory Funk, one of the greatest training schools around. And then Ace Wrestling Academy come up. If you don't think you can't learn from Bob Orton and the crew, then you probably don't need to be even trying about it. So if you want it bad enough, you're going to invest in it. It's just the way it is.
Right. So we'll, I know that we've mentioned him throughout the show. And first off, going back to Larry, he wasn't really that involved in the wrestling business as you came in. From what I understood, he was a part-time cop at the Belleville Police Department. Did you two, besides the whole Dupo and everything else, was there any other special projects that you guys worked on together?
Yeah, he wasn't a part-time police officer. He was a auxiliary police officer.
Oh, okay.
There's a different part-time police officers get paid. He volunteered his time, and he got that from his father. His father was the chief of the auxiliary department for many years. In fact, the job that his father originally held in the county, I hold that job now as back then it was called the ESDA coordinator. My job now is the EMA coordinator for the county. But Larry followed in his father's footsteps with that. And then when his father retired, he took over in the auxiliary and was the chief of that. Larry loved wrestling, and the thing that he loved, other than his family, his wife Pat and his daughter Kelly, was sports. He loved any type of sport: baseball, football, hockey. Anytime I'd go to his house, he didn't have on any series program, any type of movie. It was always sports, even if it was something he'd recorded and watched later. When we put him in an assisted living, and that's what some people didn't realize. Larry, up until the day he died, his mind was as sharp as a tack. It was just that his body had just physically, with the spinal stenosis that he had, he was confined to the chair, and we got him a motorized scooter, and he would come down to the shows. We'd pick him up, and we had a wheelchair van that we could move him around in. The week before he passed away, he was booking the matches for our big show we had coming up. And that week before, when they put him on hospice, I had called Ron Powers, and because Ron was close to him, and Ron came over and sat with us, and he lasted a week. But even then, he was talking about matches, and he told me, he said, Herb, you've built something here that is untouchable, and just continue to do it. Sam would be proud. I'm proud. And of course, no, you're not going nowhere. You're not leaving me with this mess. We had booked a big show at the end of the year, which we always did in December, a big cage match. And Travis and company had all a part of it. Travis got a great mind for the business, even though I don't agree with him. He's got a great mind. And of course, that's stick work, if you know what I'm talking about. He was talking about it, and he said, just remember, you got to do this, you got to do that. Another guy that don't get a lot of credit, and that's Drew Ebenhouse. I don't know if you guys know Drew the ring. Yeah, I'm sure you do, the ring announcer. Drew first met Larry and I at an Applebee's in Swansea, Illinois, back when we were selling the wrestling at the Chase tapes, and Larry was doing an autograph of his book, and Drew and his buddy came in and sat there all evening with us. And after, people stood outside around the building waiting to get in to see Larry Matysik. And after they were all gone, after about a 3-hour autograph signature, and we had all the TVs and Applebee's, we had all the wrestling at the Chase tapes playing. Pretty cool. And that's where we first met Drew, and Drew became a part of SICW. Larry taught him the ropes on how to do the production of the show, the TV show that we did. And when Larry got to the point where he didn't want to be on camera because of his physical ability, Drew stepped in and took that over. And I interviewed Leland Race for my show Sunday. And Leland got a real experience on learning how to do TV. It's a lot different than just doing wrestling. When you're doing production work, you got to be spot on your timing, and especially if you got commercials to add in, and then you got to make sure the guys know when to go home, because otherwise you're going to run out of time. So Drew stepped up to the plate and took that chore over, and Larry was proud of that. And I can't be prouder than Drew, because he stepped right up to the plate when SICW needed him to do that TV work.
Yeah, and Drew does a really excellent job down in MMWA, and of course also SICW, and hopefully he'll be coming around the bend as well whenever MMWA returns, and of course we'll get into SICW. Going back to MMWA real quick, Tony Costa, another real good, close personal friend of yours that you've had for many, many years. Is there one story that just stands out to you that you and Tony had like on an experience together, whether it be a road trip or something that you guys have done together, and that anything that stands out in your mind with one story?
Yeah, it's again, one could lead into another, and you guys would get tired of hearing me tell all of them, because I had so much fun with Tony Costa. He little dynamite comes in small packages, and Bruiser Brody loved him. In fact, when I would call Brody for a show, one of the first thing, I won't say the first thing, but before we got off of the phone call, and I was telling him what we were doing, where it was at, what I wanted, what I would like to have, because that was another thing. Frank would always walk in and say, "What do you want tonight, boss?" And here's this guy bigger than life, and he's asking me what I want. And I'd say all the time, I want you to send him home happy. But on the phone, we would talk, and religiously, before we get off the phone, he'd say, "Is my little buddy going to be on the card?" And it was always Tony Costa that he was talking about. He just took a liking to Tony. And I've got a picture of Tony standing down in front of him, and here's this big monster standing up over Tony. And but so many stories. I mean, he the card, and the card I told you about in Rolla, Missouri, on the way back. I mean, that it was a heavy nut I had to crack that night with the talent I had on there. And 35 people shows up, And we're driving back home, and the wives travel with us all the time. And we're coming down the interstate, and Tony said, "Why don't we stop and get something to eat?" And I said, "Buddy, I'd love to buy you dinner, but I'm broke." And he said, "I'll help pull on it." He said, "I think I can afford to buy you a hamburger." Always, but when we picked out, I told him he had to come up with a entrance music back then, and we were doing shows up in Northern Illinois, and we were on the way up to a place called Waseca, Illinois. A guy that had booked me to do a show up there, and it was an outside show. We had Brody on that card. We had Killer Tim Brooks on the card. So we left the St. Louis area, and we had these tapes, and we started playing them. And I can't tell you how many Alabama songs that we listened to over and over and over, to the point where, we got to the song, "You Can't Keep a Good Man Down." And I think we played it all the way to Waseca, Illinois, all the way back. And we got back home. He says, "Well, I think I made my mind up." And I told him, I said, "If you tell me you can't keep a good man down, I'm going to throw you out of this car." But that's what he ended up. That was his theme song. And I mean, that it was such a fitting theme song for him, because you talk about the Ever Ready Bunny. He'd take you'd have to see him, the beatings he took from Toe Joe and from Gypsy Joe. And if you're not familiar with those two guys, just go look them up. They were the king of hardcore back in the Nashville days. They worked with Jerry Lawler and all those guys there, and he loved it, and he never gave up. He was that ever ready bunny that he would take a licking and keep on ticking, and so that song, "You Can't Keep a Good Man Down," was very fitting for my friend Tony Costa.
All right. Awesome. I think GQ's got our next question here for you.
So I am, but I know you've been majorly around them a lot with the Cauliflower Alley Club. For those that don't know what they do, can you help to explain what it does for the professional wrestling industry and how one would become a member?
The Cauliflower Alley Club is by far the greatest organization out there when it comes to the professional wrestling business. They have done more good for the men and women who have fallen on hard times. It's been in the business, whether it be a worker, promoter, referee, ring announcer, as long as you've been in the business in one form or fashion or another. Speaking firsthand, Larry Matysik, we all fall on hard times unless you are independently wealthy. I don't care. Sooner or later, you are going to get to a point in your life where you need a little extra boost. And I was at and this was during Larry. And I'm not saying anything that I wouldn't be able to say, because that's how close I was to Larry and his wife Pat. And still have talked to Pat all the time. But Larry was sick, having some issues, and I was at a New Breed wrestling show down in southern Missouri with my friend Scotty Z and Carl Lauer. I don't know if you remember Carl, ex-promoter, promoted some of the biggest shows ever in the California area years and years ago. State athletic commissioner, inspector. He was there and was very, very, been in Cauliflower Alley since its inception, I think, and was friends with Larry. And I was telling him, Larry was having just little problems and could use a little help. And we're sitting there prior to the show starting. And then he said, "Well, have you talked to Brian Blair?" And I said, "No." I said, "I haven't said anything." And he said, "Well, give Brian a call." And I said, "Okay, well, I will next week." He said, "No. Call him now. Tell him you're here with me now." Now, this is on a Saturday night, and I'm in southern Missouri at a New Breed wrestling show. And got on the phone with Brian Blair, who is the president, CEO of Cauliflower Alley, and told him, I said, Carl's sitting here with me. We're at this show, and we haven't started yet, but he just told me, call and tell you, I need to see if I can get a little help for Larry. And he said, put Carl on the phone. And I give the phone to Carl, and they get off. And Carl opened up his bookcase, a luggage thing he carries with him, and he pulls out a form. Simple one-page form. He said, fill this out. Simple, basic questions. That was on a Saturday night. Thursday of the following week, they came through for Larry. No questions asked.
Wow.
Now, that's one example, but I've seen so many of those examples, and some of them I can't talk about because that's kind of the code of honor at the club, unless they have the permission from the recipient or the family. We don't disclose a lot of that. Our good friend Darla Staggs. I don't know if you know Darla. No, GQ, you probably have been around Darla. Lives up in Minneapolis. Used to be from our area. Good fan. Won the Red Bastine Award a few years back. She was at her first wrestling show in 1959 at Peel Auditorium when Dick Hunt and Pat O'Connor wrestled. Now, you're saying, boy, how old is she now? Because she's not that old, but she was a baby, and her parents had her at that wrestling card. Her mom and dad holding her in their arms, and she tells that story all the time. She's a great wrestling fan, and she now is in charge of their benevolent part of the CAC, and that's part of her job now to present those hardship cases to the executive board. And I mean, they have helped so many people down on their luck. And I think for $25 a year, you can become a member. You don't have to be a worker. I've had a lot of my personal friends join that aren't workers, aren't in the business, but they want to support it because I've asked them to. And I think for $300, you can become a lifetime membership. And, you 4 times a year, you get what's called the EAR newsletter that keeps keep you updated on everything going on. I was honored last year with being the recipient, was supposed to be the recipient of the Red Bastine Award, which I found was really kind of ironic because Red Bastine was one of my favorites growing up. And when Brian Blair first called me and asked, I said, no, I'm not in it. I don't do it for that. He said, well, I want you to think about it. He said, you do a lot. You've done a lot for the business. You're probably the longest running promoter in the country. And so I took a couple of days and I called him back and he said, you're an ambassador for the CAC. And so I said, okay, I will. Of course, then COVID come along and that got put aside. And they're supposedly going to keep all the awards and everything this coming year. And now it's been moved back to September. The guys from Wrestle Talk Podcast, I don't know if you know Renee and all of them.
Oh, very well. Yes.
Great guys. Great guys. I mean, Ray's been to our show, Renee has, and they had a group of guys going to go to Vegas this year, and it was going to be a great time. So I hope they get to come out in September. I enjoy the Wrestle Talk Podcast too, and I enjoy all these shows because, as you can tell, I love talking wrestling just the same as you guys do. It's just it's in me. And like I said, when I get to, if you want to hear a talk, you ought to listen into a phone call Terry Funk and I have when we're on the phone. Terry's a hoot. But and speaking of Terry, there's a new group down in Texas that he's working with, the SWE. My good friend Kevin Sullivan's going down helping him, and so yeah. When you hear that Herb Simmons isn't working with other promotions or won't work with them, you got my okay to tell them they're full of what, because whatever promotions ever called me to ask for anything, I've done my best to try to help them as long as it's for the good of the business. James Beard, who's really heavily involved, one of the best referees ever in the business down in that SWE organization, a good friend, Johnny Mantell that runs the Hall of Fame, and that's the other one. you got the Hall of Fame down in Wichita Falls, Kansas, or Texas, or whatever. I can't remember where I'm at. But then you got the Luthez Tragus Hall of Fame up in Waterloo, Iowa. I really encourage you guys to go up there. My friend Troy Peterson from Impact Wrestling is really involved with that up there. We go there every year. Baron Von Raschke's there a lot of times. Ken Patera, all the guys there. I don't know if you keep up with Hannibal TV.
Yeah.
He's always at those reunions and those Hall of Fames, and it's a great time. But if you have never been, and I know you have, GQ, you've been to, I think the last time I was there, you and your wife came out. We rode in the plane, I think, either coming back or going out. I can't remember. Like I said, I'm getting old. But
well, my best friend, not my wife, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe she'll go this time. but if you haven't been out there, Ruby, you need to put that on your bucket list, because even if you go just one time in your lifetime, if you want to be in the business, the Cauliflower Alley is where you got to go, because before a lot of these guys are gone. And the WWE always has a table or two there with them guys there. Sergeant Slaughter's usually there. A couple years, Ricky Steamboat showed up. So just a host of people there.
Yeah, I think
Shawn Michaels was honored that year. He had almost all of the clique there with him. So,
yeah.
I remember when I went out there that year, you were the third person I went up to talk to. First one was, of course, Kenny G, then Dave Marquez, and saw you down there while I was coming back after getting autographs, and went straight up to you and talked to you for a while.
Yeah, they razz me all the time, because they're at TGI Fridays. They have a reserve seat there for SICW every year, because that's usually where we go. We start off there early in the morning, and we stay there until early in the morning. And I mean, not after midnight. It's usually till same time the next morning. But again, I mean, guys come down and you tell stories, and even when you hear those same stories over and over, they're still intriguing. I mean, have you found yourself talking to guys that's been out there on the road, and you say, man, I've heard that story, and man, it's just as intriguing now as it was the first time I heard it. And that's how it is when you're in a car with Terry Funk driving down to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and Bob Orton, sitting in the back seat. Or, when you're driving down I-64, going up towards Indiana, and you got Bruiser Brody and Bull Brannigan and Jerry Blackwell in a van. And they're throwing out beer bottles as quick as you're passing road signs, and I'm pulling my hair saying, man, I'm going to get stopped by the cops. And the only thing I can hope for is that they're wrestling fans and they recognize these guys.
Oh my gosh. So, yeah. So you did mention the Rev Epstein Friendship Award that the CAC recognized you last year, and of course, also you're in the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame, and of course, also you're now in 2019, you're inducted into the Midwest Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame. I mean, how does it feel being honored by all these guys, and these just feeling that you're a great asset to the entire wrestling business?
Oh man, I'm going to tell you it, and I'll use the one the night Damian Blade Butcher came to a show in East Cronolette. I had no idea that I had been chosen for that award, and Damian he got the chore of bringing the message. And again, I've never ever gave thought of receiving any type of recognition like that, because I have not done it for that. I think the awards that are, and I truly enjoy, I love every one of them. There's definitely probably other people out there just more deserving than I am. The ones that go out there and take the bumps and the bruises and have to get up in the morning and put the liniment on them because they can't get out of bed. You guys are the ones that are out there doing it. But I appreciate it to go down there and stand in front of people who I've worked with, or they've worked with me, and I've seen the Gary Jacksons of the world. I mean, Gary's been with me for and over at MMWA forever and ever. And to think here's a guy that is still out there able to go just as he did when he first started. It's amazing. And I don't know if you guys know, Bruiser Brody is the one who gave him the nickname, Night Train. And here's a guy that can just go and go and go. And those are the guys that deserve whatever honors are out there. And that's what I would like to see these younger guys that are doing it now. There's the group up, and I had even talked to them when they first started, the group up in the Cottage Hills. They had that group up there running. I can't think of CHCW, whatever the letters are. A group of guys that want to be wrestlers. And I'm telling you, they have busted their asses. Some of them's done well. Some of them probably hasn't done well, but they're chasing that dream. Now, are they doing everything the right way? No, but does any of us always do it the right way? No. And everybody says, well, we all got to work together. And I'm here to tell you, 47 years, I want somebody to tell me, other than Tony Costa and Herb Simmons, who has offered that friendship across those letters of whatever organization you are and said, let's work together. When we at SICW and MMWA, the Tim Millers of the world, and when we started it, we made the first announcement that we were going to have an open tryout session. There wasn't any other organizations that was doing that. Ben Simon, that's where Ben Simon come and tried out at. So when these few people are out there saying that nobody wants to give them a shot, well, you got to earn a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Or somebody thinks they're being mistreated. Well, I didn't get to put on this card, or why ain't I in a main event? What have you done to earn a main event? Are you selling tickets? Are you going out helping promote that show? Those are the caliber of people that I'm looking for, because it's not a one-man band, I'm telling you. I remember at South Broadway over there, guys took tickets and sold them. And, that's why that place has been there. And I'll tell you, I hope that Tony Costa's legacy continues on, because, man, you talk about history there. That place has been there. I've seen guys, like I said, the Giant Assassin, Big Daddy, Ron Powers, Big Ben was there for a while. They called him the Raging Cajun and all of that. But John Blackheart, there's a guy that's probably trained more guys in the St. Louis area than anybody has. Pete Madden, the Human Wrecking Ball. Come on, give me a break. The Midwest has got the greatest, I'm telling you. And I've seen it. 47 years, I've seen them. I've seen some come, seen some go, and I've seen some still here. Ron Powers will go with the best of them. Giant Assassin won't climb back in the ring. He'll tell you. Giant Assassin is the only guy that I know right now that when he hung his boots up says, I'm done. I couldn't pay him enough money to get back in the ring, other to come and make a personal appearance, but he realized that he can't do it anymore. But when he was in there, and of course, he's a guy that could milk the clock better than anybody could. He'd get in the ring and, he could just entertain. And Brody used to love working with him. Murdoch used to love working with him. But those are the guys that built that foundation at South Broadway Athletic Club. And I'm telling you, I just hope that little Anthony, I call him little Anthony, that's who his uncle wanted to take that torch and carry it. And I can tell him it's going to take that entire locker room to help him do that. And it's a shame that this COVID's been here, because now look at how long it's been since the wrestling's been there. I know you guys said that he's in, and then when I talked to him, he said he was going to schedule something in April there. I hope it works out. I hope this COVID, and that's the other thing I take heat, because, why isn't SICW running? Well, first of all, my fans. I got to make sure they're safe. The guys in the locker room's got to be safe, because I'm telling you, I would not be able to sleep, because I've lost 12 friends to this COVID virus. 12 friends. And I deal with doctors every day. I had a doctor on our briefing that we do every day at 3:30. I had a doctor on today that just described, and he's the director of the ICU unit over here at one of the local hospitals. He described today how terrible the patients that he's had to treat when your family members can't come in and see you, and when these patients die by themselves, when the nurses and the doctors turn into your family. I would not be able to live peacefully if I put a show on and one of my fans, it got traced back that it was at one of my shows or one of my workers did that. It's not worth it. This is wrestling. Unless somebody comes to me and says, I make my living doing this once a month or twice a month, and I don't know anybody. I know one guy who's been out there that has busted his butt on this circuit, and that's Tokyo Monster Cahagas, has worked his butt off night after night after night. That's a guy that's making a fairly good living doing it. But I don't know anybody here in our area that's doing it. Nobody. And I know guys that's done more than others have. Ricky Cruz, he runs the Chicago. He's been all over, but he's not making a living. When I talk about making a living, that's your living. You're out there working. You're going from promotion to promotion. You're getting paid a paycheck. And you all have heard the stories of getting a handshake or a hot dog and saying, hey, thanks for taking your bumps and bruises tonight. See you later. That's not making a living.
I never got. I got nachos.
And probably didn't get no cheese on them. You know, but again, and I'm not talking about anybody, because I'm not going to do that. I don't have to, and I'll sit and bait that with anybody. You know, tell me who's making a living doing this, that it's so important that we have to have wrestling right now. You just heard Sean Vincent talking about it. He works in a hospital on a COVID floor. I mean, again, I'm glad these groups that want to get back up and running. But over here, there's an executive order from the governor and the Department of Public Health that has told us what we can do and what we shouldn't be doing. And until that, and of course, with my position, that my day job that pays my bills, that helps my family, I'm not going to jeopardize that, because then it's just a vicious circle. I jeopardize my living. I jeopardize my fans if I go out there and do it. And I jeopardize the workers, and I just don't want to do that ever. And then I got an insurance company that says, if you violate that executive order and something should happen, guess who we don't pay? My wife just had to go and pay my wife just went and paid my insurance premium yesterday. And I haven't run a show in a year, but guess what? I've been with my insurance company for many, many, many years, and we're going to run again, but it's going to be when I feel it's safe for the fans and for the workers. And I'm paying my insurance because
I agree.
I don't want to have to look for a new insurance company.
So we all know that I collect a lot of stuff and everything. I'm just kind of curious, is there a piece of wrestling memorabilia that you own that means the most to you personally?
You know, I went through a house fire several years ago, and I lost a lot of stuff. My wife, my dear wife of many years, salvaged some of it for me, and rightly, I didn't realize till just a couple of weeks ago that she had salvaged a lot of photos, and that all came about this project I'm working on this book with Mr. Wheatley. Some great photos, but I've got some things I've started collecting again. I've got a stand-up pictures, 6 foot tall, of Sam Muchnick, Larry Matysik together, Bruiser Brody. I've got, like I said, all the wrestling tapes. I've got a collection of Bruiser Brody stuff that I've just ran across not too long ago from a friend. A lot of his tapes from Japan and Puerto Rico, Texas. I've got quite a bit of the Texas wrestling stuff. But to say one item, I got some Luthez glasses. That was kind of just a few of them were made. In fact, I got 3 or 4 of them that my boss had found for me. But I've got, remember the programs that the Wrestling at the Chase used to, at the Kiel Auditorium? I've got that entire collection, all in hardbound books. I had got 3 of them from Larry Matysik that he had actually personally autographed, that I've told my wife those will more than likely be buried with me. But now, thanks to another great friend of mine, who I will leave unnamed now, has provided me with that entire collection, starting back in 1953 of Sam Muchnick's era, all the way up to 1983, and they're all in crisp, clear, hardbound books, and date every one they ever published. I have.
Nice. Well, I mean, at least I know it's kind of hard. I mean, we go something through like that, and then you lose, belongings. I mean, but the most important thing is you're coming out with your life. It just kind of sucks to seeing all that go away, but at least you got still some really good stuff that still is, definitely, something that is still pretty close to you here.
Yeah, and I've got a big poster that hung on the wall in 1969 at the Kiel Auditorium, advertising the match then. It's in a nice frame, so that's a nice piece of history. There's no other copy of that out there that we know of. So those are the kind of things that my wife says I ought to open up a little museum, and I've got enough photographs to wallpaper every room in a house. And I when I went down to Johnny Mantel's, the Hall of Fame there in Wichita, boy, if you've never been down there, everybody who's ever put on a pair of tights or whatever, they've got something there. As soon as you walk in, the big sign from the Sportatorium is hanging up on the wall, and it's just room after room of wrestling history.
Wow, the Sportatorium! My goodness, yeah. Oh my goodness, I think we are getting a call. So give me 1 second here. Are you got the Falls Count Everywhere podcast? Who's this?
This is Dennis McCaws, Attila.
Hey, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Good. Hey, I just want to say, as many accolades as anybody could give Herb Simmons, they're always going to be understated. What he's done for this business and for so many of the boys throughout the years, it's just hard to really quantify what he has done. And he's one of the best.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I know that Herb has said that, it's the guys that are getting into the ring and doing the work and everything else. But you got to remember, I mean, it's somebody that for as long as Herb has done it and how he's done it and how professional he is and how he's willing to help people, that should be, that should be more than enough for recognition. Especially, I mean, that's definitely a Hall of Fame attitude, at least for me anyway. And I know, humility is nice to have, but it's definitely deserving in his right, though.
Well, I appreciate Herb, he talks a lot about, what the boys do that get in the ring, and, we go out there and we're bumping around or whatever, but it takes someone to lead the ship as well. And it's got to be the right person. And Herb is the epitome of that. And I just wanted to thank him personally for everything he's ever done.
Well, Dennis, I appreciate that. And there's a guy, class act. I mean, I think there's a lot of the guys out there that don't get the accolades that they need, because, there's a guy that Harley Race, I would think that Hughes would probably agree was probably the greatest on God's green earth. I mean, stop and think about it. We talked about it the other night. There's a guy that if you close your eyes and picture Harley Race's match against whoever you want to put him in there against. Did Harley Race do any high flying? Did Harley Race ever move fast around the ring? For one, he couldn't, but he didn't have to. But boy, he had you on the edge of your seat from the moment he climbed in that squared circle until he crawled out of there with blood all over him or holding that title up in the air. You were entertained. And he did it so methodically. I mean, the diving headbutt. And that's probably why Dennis probably just had a little neck constructive surgery done, because he developed that diving headbutt. But a guy that like Dennis, that's had some of the greatest matches against the Flash Flanagans of the world, against the Ron Powers of the world, against the Giant Assassin of the world, and then travel against Haku, the Barbarian, just named after name, and in fact, that was one of the matches that we had scheduled in July of last year in Belleville. He'd had a great match with Tommy Dreamer. You remember that, Dennis?
Oh yeah, highlight of my career.
with Road Warrior Animal at ringside, if I'm not mistaken.
Possibly the last time Road Warrior involved.
You were probably the last one that Road Warrior got to chop. So, and I say that because, again, we get back to, well, why does SICW, let me back up. There was a statement made a while back, a year or so ago, from another promotion that said, well, we don't have to bring in legends to draw a crowd. And again, and I think Dennis will help attest to this, or Sean would, when we bring in the legends, as I said earlier, yeah, it's to help put butts in the seats, but it's helping the fans relive. They get to shake these hands of these legends that they never got to see before, but it also helps the boys in the locker room. Wouldn't you agree, Dennis?
Absolutely, I'd agree. I mean, there was, the education. I don't care how long you've been in this business. When you can sit down in the back and you can talk to, the Ronnie Garvins, the Ricky Steamboats, the Bob Ortons, the Hakus, the Barbarians, the Tommy Dreamers, and the list just goes on and on. The education that, as a wrestler, that you get from them is invaluable. I look back all the thousands of hours spent in the car with Harley Race. And I mean, it's just anytime, the new generations plus us old guys can get in the room and listen to these guys, we can all learn. And I mean, that's also the bridge that's going to keep this thing we love alive.
Well, I had Keith Smith, from the Smith family, third generation family. I had him on at my show a few weeks ago, and I think he said it great too. There's a guy that worked with Snuka, worked with Pat O'Connor, used to travel with his dad, Ed Smith. Ed, great friend, shared the stage there at South Broadway Athletic Club with him on the doing the commentary and all that for many, many years. But, Keith summed it up to the fact that and him and Pete Madden, there was two guys that were separate in every walk of life, but the common denominator that brought them together was wrestling. Pete was out doing the band and the surfing and all of that stuff. Keith was doing the hunting and the wrestling, and so the wrestling brought them together, and they've been friends ever since, and they stay friends. So wrestling, when you get that bond in that family of the wrestling group, and then when you bring in the legends that can sit there and kind of just spread a little bit more glue around and talk about what it was back in the day when they were having their road trips, I think guys could take a lot of advantage of that. So yeah, it helps put butts in the seats when I bring in a Hacksaw Jim Duggan or a Ted DiBiase, but I do it for the fans and for the guys in the locker room.
Yeah. Well, Di or Attila, I should say. We got another fellow Hall of Famer. That went in, I believe it was last year. Along with
Aren't you going into Hall of Fame too?
I think there's another one on the line.
Oh,
yeah.
Well
deserving, I might say.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes.
I mean, like I said, it's I feel that some other guys should go in before me, but all I could just say is just thank you, and I just hope I show a good example. I mean, that's all I try and do is show a good example and a good work ethic and what the business should be about. So that's all I try and do, and it's definitely going to be a humbling experience when that time comes. And knowing them in that brotherhood, it's quite an honor. So
and speaking on that note, Larry and I and a few other people started the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame at South Broadway. Nick Redmeyer was a part of that. A gentleman named Keith Shildreth, who was a reporter for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, was on that committee. We started that Hall of Fame, and it was real clear. We wanted it to be a true Hall of Fame. We didn't want it to be like the WWE that the limo driver was in it, or the movie stars, all of that. And it's not even a brick and mortar type Hall of Fame. And if you go to the South Broadway Athletic Club and you look at the Hall of Fame that's in there, those are Hall of Famers. And I think that's what guys like you and Dennis and everybody that's in that Hall of Fame you're going into there need to look at that and say, I've contributed. I've done something. I didn't have to buy this. I went out there and busted my butt. And that's why I think it's very important that everybody understand that St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame, it may be of the wrestling at the Chase, starting with Sam Muchnick, the Von Erichs, Cowboy Bob Ellis, Johnny Valentine, Penny Banner, and the list goes on. The Funks are in there, the Briscoes. Every one of those names, even Ed Smith's in there as far as the referees, because I said, look, we all know the referees can make or break a match. I'll tell you, they knew what their role was. They that's one thing Sam Muchnick was really strict about. You don't put your hands on the referee unless there's an angle. Nowadays, the referee takes 100. Sometimes the referee nowadays takes more bumps than some of the workers do. And I think that takes away from if you're wearing that striped shirt, or when they went to the blue shirts, or the years ago they had white shirts, the referee is supposed to be the referee. He's supposed to be the cop. He's the law and order guy. And if you just allow them to get beat up, then you might as well not have them at all. So, the ring announcer, the referees is a big part of that match, as you all know. And that's why Ed Smith is in that Hall of Fame, because he was one of the ones that go in there and keep that law and order. But it's a true Hall of Fame. And like I said, the one you're going into and the one Dennis and I am in, I'm just honored to do that. And I know you are too, but guys, they'll get their shot at it.
Oh yeah.
It's
definitely will.
It's definitely humbling. And I mean, Herb, when you and I went in last year, looking at the classes before us, and then looking, this great class that Ruby's a part of. You got the Giant Assassin, you got Ron Powers, and Ruby, I felt the same way. I looked, as big of an honor as it was, I looked and said, man, there's so many people that I would have put ahead of me, and I mean, that's just, it's very humbling, because that's also voted on by your peers. That's not a popularity contest. That isn't this guy's whatever, this is your peers that says, hey, this is one of the best of it that's done it here. And so it's very humbling.
Well, and what we did with the wrestling at the Chase, the first 3 people that we put in there, we left it up to the fans to vote on them. And then Larry came up with the thought of, he had access to all of the records of the guys that we were thinking about. And then we kind of just went off of that. Who was the drawing power? Who had the most win losses? Who could go out there and do it? And that's why we say that is a true, legitimate Hall of Fame. And I can't be prouder than it to be right there at South Broadway Athletic Club.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's, like I said, it's going to be. I'm hoping early spring is when that ceremony happens, and when the day happens, all I can say is, boys, I sure hope you like whiskey because I'm bringing it. Save us some good bottles, man, and I'm going to be willing to share with the brotherhood. So,
right.
All right, brother. So, I'll tell you, I got another call coming in. But
Yep.
Thanks for
I'm going to bow
brother.
out.
And I hope,
Thanks, Dennis.
Hope to talk to you soon, man.
See ya.
All right, you got the Falls Count Everywhere podcast. Who is this?
Mr. Ruby, Mr. Simmons, how are you gentlemen today? Loving the show. But I think Herb is making your show, Mr. Ruby.
That is. I will not lie.
I think
Mr. Simmons, how are you, sir?
Fine. I think I recognize that voice as the young man that used to run around South Broadway Athletic Club many years ago. Dirty, is that you?
Yes, sir, it is. I have to say, I do talk a lot of trash about you, Mr. Simmons, but I have to say this. You have to respect the man who's been in the business as long as you have, who has done the things that you have in this business. You have brought, I know these people talk about, bash you about bringing the legends in, but it's like you said, Herb, you're bringing those legends in to help these younger guys that you have coming up, and that's what's really good. I'll remember a conversation from a friend of mine, Mr. Damian Cortez, at one of your shows that he was on, and he was talking to Tony Atlas, and Tony was giving him words of advice. So, Herb, you've been in it too long. Don't let all them haters hate on you, man. You're the best damn promoter in the area. That's plain and simple, hands down. Can't deny it.
Well, I appreciate that, and of course, if my good friend Tony Costa was still here, I would play second to him any day of the week because, even though I was in it a little bit longer than him, he taught me a lot. And I think guys like Dennis and the ones that's been around a lot longer knew what Tony did back in the day. And he taught me how to be a little bit tougher than what I wanted to be at times, because he'd say, if you let them get over on you, they're going to think you're easy. And so I followed his lead on some of that stuff, but I appreciate those kind words. And like I said, I'm going to continue my part of the legacy. I mean, I had made some promises to Larry and to Tony. And if God's willing, and as the old saying, and the creek don't rise, SICW is going to be back when this COVID thing is over. And there's things that's in the making that I think is going to be a game changer. I've already talked about the book that I'm working with Mr. Wheatley on. There's a film that we've already got a commitment on based on wrestling at the Chase that I think is just going to be big for the entire wrestling Midwest people. I think it's something that's so long overdue. And even though Larry and I had talked about it, now there are people that is realizing the history of what wrestling at the Chase meant to so many. Even though it's old, there are still people out there that remember it. And I think a lot of it's got to do with us keeping these type of programs going on and the wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, and Herb, I have to agree with you on that one. It is. I mean, it's. I know that you've talked about possibly trying to get a lot of that stuff redigitized to get it back out there, and that I think that would be great. I think that, like you just said, with the movie coming out, I think that's going to be really good for people to really see, because, I mean, I've had you on previous shows that I've done, and I mean, St. Louis is one of the staples for wrestling. And I mean,
yeah, it always was. And I got to tell you, you and I have had talks over the last few years. And the one thing I want to say that you have always taken constructive criticism great. There are people out there that don't know what constructive criticism is. And when you have called me and we have talked and you've asked me to be honest with you, and that's the only thing I know how to be. And even though when it may have been harsh a couple of times, you have never taken it the wrong way. And I even told you that on your shows, I have seen your improvement. And you talked about Damien. I think if you remember, I told you that was a young man that if he stayed healthy, that could do something in this business. And I just hope that continues to go on.
Well, yeah, that's why, because I know you watched another show and you said, I wish Dirty wouldn't play so much of a character. So that's why I'm not playing the character right now. That's why I'm kind of giving you your credit. Because, I mean, you deserve your credit no matter what. Regardless if you're a face or heel, Herb Simmons deserves his credit. Now, I was being nice, because Tony is passed. Tony was one of the greatest living promoters in this area. But if we're talking about living promoters right now, Herb.
Right.
I mean, in the indie scenes, there's nobody that can compare to you right now in this day and age.
Right.
Well, and I have the SICW going right now.
And I appreciate that. And I just, what I would like to just see everybody, and I just think that it's wrestling. And I keep saying that. Why guys have to get so bent out of shape. And I know there's a little thing going on now that certain people would handle it certain ways. I know how I would handle it. That doesn't mean other people will, but it's wrestling. Until you can tell me that, if you can tell me you're making money in this business to pay your bills and support your family, then I say go out there and fight tooth and nail. But it's not worth. Life is too short to get in all of this he say, she say, hard feelings, because I'm going to tell you, when you get put in that box, those people that
you ain't coming out.
When they decide to come there, if they decide to come there, you can stand there and say all you want about how sorry you are and how you wish you'd have done this or you wish you'd have done that. But guess what? The person laying in that box ain't hearing you. So now's the time to be, if you're any type of carpenter at all, to rebuild them bridges.
Herb, I think we're on the same bridge. We're on the same page, because I've mentioned that to certain people before, and I've made some menses with certain people. So I know exactly what you're saying, and I've said it to others. I've said it before too. I mean, life is too short, you never know. You said, you've had family members that have died from COVID. I've had family members that have died from COVID. And I mean, it sucks. And I think people use wrestling, especially like SICW and MMWA. And, we'll throw Dynamo in there, and we'll throw the one out in Troy. What is that? WLW. What's the one in Hannibal? Ain't there one in Hannibal? But everybody uses those as their outlets, you know what I'm saying, to get away from reality. And I think we've just been so 2020, and so far 2021 has just been such a terrible, terrible year. I think just people want to escape from it all and not be in that reality. And that's what wrestling does for some people.
Rough Cut, you was there the night Tony Costa got inducted into the Hall of Fame, weren't you?
Yeah, yes, I was.
Yes.
Yeah. I think you were, and so I'll take you a trip down memory lane there. During his after I introduced Gary had introduced me and I'd introduced Tony, and after he did his acceptance, his comments were, "I love everybody." He says, "One, I'm too old to love everybody, and some people have not liked me over the years, but guess what? I love them. Even those who didn't like me, I still love," because Tony had reached a point in his time. He just said, "Hey, it's not worth it." And him and I had that conversation. there were guys over there that didn't like Tony. There was guys over there that didn't like me, but they came there because that was the place to be. The marquee on the banner said MMWA/SICW. And Dirty, you know that whole story when and Tony and I laughed, and we joked about it. There was so many people out there that thought that him and I was arch enemies. It was better than the
NW. You guys tell me the truth.
It was better than the NWO deal.
Yep, it was.
Again, yeah, and again, it was. And him and I had talked, and I got to say, I'd be the one saying, "Yeah, come on, let's do a show. Let's do." No, he said, "Let them talk about it. If they're talking about us, they're leaving everybody else alone." And Tim Miller, and everybody knows Tim, and I like Tim, and Tim was a good guy. He loved Tony, and Tony loved him, and I think he even bought into it. But that just showed you the relationship Tony and I had, because we could keep a secret. Nowadays, guys can't keep a secret in the locker room.
That's true. All right, well, thank you for your time. But now I'm going to play heel. You're welcome, Mr. Rough Cut. You're doing a good job. You just need to get rid of Mr. GQ because he's terrible on your show. But Ruby, you keep doing a good job. And when I see my man Damien next time, I'll tell him to drop you on your head again.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we'll wait for that in a couple months.
Yeah. Later, boys.
All right.
Thanks.
See ya, man. All right. Yeah, and I think I know someone else is calling in at that point. Let me see. I know who it was. Yeah, we're in fact, I've probably got maybe about a few more questions here, but if he wants to call back, I know who it was. But let's if we can. So you were mentioning this book throughout the podcast. So this is a book that you're actually contributing for. You're not actually writing with the Wrestling That's a Chase coffee table. Is that right?
Yeah. What I'm doing is I'm helping a gentleman named Ed Wheatley, who has done a few baseball books. In fact, he did the story on the St. Louis Browns. I don't know if you've.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll get back to that here in just a second, because I know who's calling. All right, you're on the Falls Count Everywhere podcast. Who's this?
This is Shaft.
Shaft, what's going on, man?
I'm just talking about, Wrestling at the Chase DVDs. And as Herb Simmons can recall, the first time I saw him selling the DVDs was at the Peabody Flea Market, where my daughter had a stand, and he was selling Wrestling at the Chase DVDs, and people will come by and he'd have them playing, and he loved Wrestling at the Chase, and he said, "You remember Wrestling at the Chase?" And, he was selling the DVDs at the Peabody Flea Market. And if I'm not mistaken, that was around 2008, Herb.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In fact, we even did if you remember, Shaft, we did a wrestling show there at the Peabody Flea Market, along with a music show. We had Mad Maynard and Jackie McCoy there, who were two of the rock and roll oldies. In fact, they spin the old 45 records we had down there with it.
And at that time, I wrestled Gary Jackson at the Peabody Flea Market.
Sure did. And I got to tell you, your daughter was, she had the stand right across from my wife's and mine. And she was making, I think, candles at that time. In fact,
candles, yeah.
In fact, she got my wife hooked on doing that. And because she made all kinds of, they smell good, look good. And a nice young lady, I tell you. In fact, I saw her at one of the last shows at South Broadway. She had came up. I was there, and I didn't even recognize her. She was lovely as always. And then when she told me who she was, it brought back memories.
And she make masks and T-shirts now, but I remember when you were selling the DVDs at the Peabody Flea Market, and people would stand there and watch a DVD before they even go and shop in the Peabody Flea Market.
Now, do you remember, did we have the DVDs then, or were they just on the VHSs? Because when we first came out, the first 3 volume, because I'll be honest with you, Larry and I didn't know anything about DVDs. When our production guy asked us about DVDs, we said, "What the hell's a DVD?"
I know you was selling wrestling at the Chase and everything, and I started watching wrestling at the Chase when I was 10 years old, and I remember George Abel was sitting there behind the table and everything, and Gene Kaniski was the heavyweight champion. But now I just wanted to share that and everything, that you was a wrestling at the Chase, love of the life, just.
In fact, you mentioned George Abel. You mentioned George Abel's name. I just found one of my old pictures because in this book that we're doing, Larry he learned a lot from George Abel. And so we wanted to tell that story, and it was hard to find a photo, and I knew I'd had one that Larry had gave me. So I just found that last week and sent it over to Ed to be a part of the book. It's funny you mentioned George Abel's name.
Yes, because, like I said, I was a little kid, 10 years old, and like I say, wrestling at the Chase. I never did get to wrestling at the Chase to watch it, but I was at the Kill, the St. Louis Arena. Then the St. Louis Arena became the Checker Dome. But yes, Sam Muchnick was a promoter, and whenever he went on vacation at wrestling at the Chase, it went down to Tampa, Florida with Gordon Soley.
Yep. Well, and that was the other thing. Unless you were a diehard fan like you and me and a lot of us were, Sam would take those breaks from time to time, and then they would bring tapes in from other parts of the country, and that was the connection that he had. And plus, it gave them time off, and usually it was time when the Kiel Auditorium had other big events booked in there. Sam was big on bringing in the Harlem Globetrotters, if you remember that.
I saw them at the Kiel, the original Harlem Globetrotters.
Right.
Metropolitan, yes.
Yeah. So, but it's good to have those memories.
And I just wanted to call in and share about wrestling at the Chase, because, back then, like I said, that was wrestling, and me, myself, I started late. I started at 45, but I wasn't fin to do no moonsault and none of that. I just wanted to arm drag, headlock, body slam, suplex, and just wrestle, But I just wanted to share that little bit.
Well, I think you would agree, Shaft, that that the reason why when you started wrestling, you did that style because that's what you grew up on and watched, and I think you found out it could work. And I think if these guys nowadays would listen to guys like you and a few of these other veterans or the senior guys, and nothing against, and I said this earlier tonight, these guys and girls that are going out there wanting to do this business, they just need to, if they're really wanting to have some longevity in this thing that we love to do, they need to take some experience, because, and this is what I tell them, ask any of these legends that I bring in or that they can get around. The amount of injuries that they had back then were far and few between. That's because they knew how to take care of one another. Nowadays, I mean, guys are getting their legs hurt, they're getting concussions, and it's because they're doing all this stuff that they don't need to do to get over. That's my opinion.
And time has changed in everything. And, I tell a lot of the youngsters, go out there and be safe, because yes, for one, you walk in, for two, you want to walk out, and for three, you want to go to that job Monday morning.
Yeah, because I don't know of any, unless you're up there in the WWE, which They don't just take anybody in off the street. I don't know anybody that's out there working SICW or any of these other organizations that if they're getting hurt, they're going to get a check because it just doesn't happen that way. So you're right. They got to take care of that day job because that's what's taking care of them and their family.
And like I say, in the WWE, All Elite, they're doing the high spots and everything. But, that's what this generation of fans like to see. Yes, old school is good. Old school is old school. But, me, myself, I wouldn't do it. But this generation of the fans, they want to see the flips and the turns. Time has changed in baseball, football, basketball, and hockey. There's certain things 40 years and 30 years ago you can do, but you can't do it now. Flagrant fouls in basketball where the Pistons will do whatever. But I just wanted to, call in and congratulate Rick Ruby on being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And my good friend, Mr. GQ, sitting and relaxing and everything. Is always a pleasure to see him doing his thing on, Falls Count Anywhere Line Time podcast. And like I say, you old father time in the wrestling business, years and years, but, all you got to do is just keep waking up and everybody keep having fun, because that's the main thing. If you not having fun, get out.
Yep.
Well, that's the thing. And I appreciate
don't ruin it for everybody else.
Yep. That's like I said, life's too short. And you, of all people, should know you were close to our good friend Tony Costa, and you knew what he thought about the business. And I know for a fact that you and him had many, many hours of discussion about the business. And the one thing about it is you're right. Times have changed, but the concept of the business is the same. And that concept is to entertain the fans in a safe way.
And got to, and got to be safe and, and big part is still, if you're having fun, have fun. If you're not having fun, please get out. Don't ruin it for everybody else.
Exactly. And that's the thing I want to thank you because, just like with Rough Cut show here and GQ, your show that you and do and Vader, it helps keep the tradition alive. And, you have guests come on there and talk about it. And without that, we don't have the money to buy all that TV commercials and promote this stuff the way we do. So what each of you guys do with your podcast and that is definitely a shot in the arm for the business.
And I want to thank everybody. And, like I said, I'm going to let you guys get back to this wonderful podcast because, like I say, Rick Ruby, you listen to me, I listen to your show, and that's just the way it is, and until next Thursday outside the ring, until next Thursday, Falls Count Anywhere, I'm going to tune in next week also. And I just want to thank for letting me come on and talk about wrestling at the Chase, because that's where it started with me at.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, Shaft, is good stuff, brother. And but tune in next Thursday. Definitely he'll have an entertaining show for sure. With a couple of guests coming in with some of the guys, with the Chris Excellence and Sean Vincent, that ought to be a barn burner for sure. But yeah, brother, thank you very much for calling us in. I appreciate the congratulations again, and hope to talk to you soon, man.
All right, thank you.
All right, man. That was Shaft on the line here, and I appreciate everybody that's hanging in here. I know we've been on quite a bit here tonight, but I promise we only got just about a couple or a few more questions to go. And I know that we were just talking about before that calling with Shaft. In fact, let me just do something here just real quick. So you mentioned about the videos that you, the pictures that you're trying to provide for the book. So you're basically a contributor to this. You're not actually doing any type of writing contribution to this book? Or?
Yeah, they asked me to write a brief article of my what wrestling at the Chase meant to me. So I think that will be in there along with the photos. The gentleman I was telling you that's doing it is wrote a couple of baseball books. That's been in fact, he just won a award for the last one that he did. Knows all about wrestling at Chase. Grew up in St. Louis, so really looking forward to it. Over the years, it's like the business. Somebody wakes up one morning and says, "I want to be in the wrestling business," or "I want to be a promoter," and realistically, they probably shouldn't be. But if that's what they dreamt one night and woke up, who are we to say you shouldn't be? Time will tell if it was the right thing for him to do. I've had people call. Larry's had people call. When the NWL was coming to St. Louis, Major, the owner of that company, called us. As I told you earlier, I met with him at a restaurant in St. Louis a couple of times. Met with him over here a couple of times. They wanted me to sell out to him and come to work for him, and I chose not to do that, and I made the right decision. But I had several people that looked at the whole deal. I mean, we had had a copy of their 5-year plan, and I wish Mr. Bateson well, because he lasted a little while, and he let the guys follow the dream. He paid them probably better than anybody else out there was paying them, but the longevity just wasn't there. And there's such things called oversaturation, and that's one thing that I can't seem to get over. Some people that, especially in today's world, people only have so much money to go around for entertainment. And when I keep saying the strong will survive, that's going to happen. People's going to have to pick and choose on what entertainment they want to see. And so you hear this talk all the time about, well, why can't everybody get together and everybody do this? That all starts at the ground level. That starts at the guys in the ring. The guys got to drop this ego. Tony Costa didn't have an ego. Herb Simmons didn't have the ego. I mean, like I said, that banner said SICW, MMWA, or MMWA, SICW. We cross-promoted shows. Like I said, I've worked with everybody out there. Tony would work with anybody. It's just that starts with the guys in that ring. They got to be able to distinguish about belts or props. It's not paying more, no less. So, but the book, I'm excited about that. It's going to have a lot of great pictures in it. Some that's never been seen before, I can tell you. Some nice articles. I've already read the draft, the third different draft of it. There'll probably be another one before it's all goes to print. But I think that's just going to help the entire wrestling business here in the Midwest, because the story is going to be told, like I said, all the way back from the beginning, back with the Sam and Tom Pax, and there's going to be names in there, the Garibaldi brothers and people like that, a true wrestling fan, if they don't know about them, they're going to take time to research and say, oh, wow, that was really a unique situation. The original bell from Wrestling at the Chase is the one that we have. So, I mean, stories like that in there. And again, I don't want to get into too much of it, because it's going to be a good book, I think. And then, like I said, the film part of it, It's going to be like a documentary, more or less. They did one a few years back. Larry did, with a look back at wrestling at the Chase, which was really big. But I've reached out to some of the legends. Baron von Raschke has wrote a nice article, a foreword that will be in the book. Jerry Briscoe has written one. I'm waiting for the one from Ted DiBiase. So we're so confident that it's going to be a good book. There, and usually a book has one person that writes a foreword for the book, but this one here will have probably a few of them, because it's going to be that much information in it.
Yeah, like I said, and there's no projected timeline on when this.
And South Broadway is going to be mentioned in it too, because you can't talk wrestling in St. Louis that you don't talk about South Broadway Athletic Club.
Yeah, exactly. But did you have? Well, is there any projected finish date for this book, or is it just whenever?
Yeah, and again, there's certain times that they do it, because, and again, I'm not that familiar with publishing, and it's got to go to the graphics, and you got to make sure these pictures. One is there's no copyright infringements. Of course, all the ones I have, they're mine. There are a few that some people have provided that we're looking out just to make sure that there's no copyright infringements on them. So we'll get that all clear up. But then they all have to make sure they're scannable, because you want to get the best quality you can. Of course, as I've told them, as my kind of being a guy who is leading some expertise, I kind of like the nostalgic look of some of the old black and white photos. I think that adds a little bit more historical value to the book, because we're talking about history here. The worst thing I want to see is I want to have a book that's dating back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and on up. And then here I got color pictures in there that before color was even invented, somebody's took and manipulated the photos. But, we got some shots of the wrestling at the Chase, at the Corsand Room, at the Kiel Auditorium. So I think it's going to be a great book. We've already got commitments on some good publicity that will be coming out on it when it does. But I would say this year for sure, we're probably the last I talked with Ed, about 3-4 weeks away from it getting ready to go for its final review. So I'm really excited about it coming out this year.
Perfect. All right, and I just got a couple, probably 1 or 2 questions just left here for you, and we're going to come back to that. But I want to let everybody know here real quick that next week we have our scheduled guest already, which is going to be the Iron Spike Hawk Elliott, who he was inducted into the 2016 class of the Midwest Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame. He's got some great stories. He's been involved in the business way over for 30 years plus, and just some great stories that he has with his travels, and of course being involved, as far as getting up in the business, and just he's got some great stuff. Just trust me. So that'll be next week, 8 p.m. Start time with the Iron Spike Hawk Elliott. And as we continue on here, so
another class act, Hawk Elliott. I'm telling you, they don't come much tougher than him.
Oh yeah, definitely. Hawk is definitely a class act for sure, and really I have never really heard anybody say anything bad about Hawk Elliott. So when you get by with that, that he's truly one of a kind to be in the business. So, but getting real back, because last year you had about, I'm going to say you had at least around 30 dates that you had scheduled for 2020 for SICW. Then, of course, COVID comes and kills it all. Now, do you plan on building anything up for a big year in 2021, even if you do get clearance, or do you plan on taking things a small step at a time to see what kind of happens, and maybe for the following year?
No, if we can get this COVID thing cleared up, we're going to hit the ground running. The goalpost will be moved, and there's no need to sit back and wait, because the one thing that my guys know is our direction that we're going. We do things old school. And what I mean by that is we book backwards. Some people won't know what that means. But to give you an insight is that if I start next month, 12 months from now, I know where I'll be. If everybody's healthy, stays with us, I know what will happen 12 months from that day. And if not 12 months, 6 months. And then we will work backwards. I can tell you, if we would open up today, we already know what our shows are planned for December. Now, that's just at our local show that we do in East Grondolet. That doesn't take into consideration the spot shows, as we call them, the fundraisers that we do. But then we build off of them, especially the angles and things of that sort. So, and that's just old school booking. Paul Bosch, Jeff Jarrett, anybody in the business that knew old school booking, Fritz von Erich, knew that's how you did it. But it takes a good group of guys to make that work. And that's why the guys that I have available and have access to know how to do that and get it done. Television is another thing that is right around the corner. Again, we had the charter cable for a couple of years. Like I said, I've got right at 600 and some episodes that we had done. I mean, I could take and throw them back out there and just do reruns, and people would get a kick out of them. But I'm confident that there's something else in the making there. There's a 30-minute program. I told you I've got the library of Dick DeBruiser that we're working on all of his TV tapes. Once those get downloaded from the TV reels, you may see something of a special once a week on one of the St. Louis channels of a trip down memory lane. So there's a lot working, but in the meantime, our goal is if we can get the COVID behind us, we feel safe to get back in with our workers and our fans. We want to start the shows back up. I want to get the nonprofit organizations to help them get some funds because they've been shut down too, just like we have, and they're going to need some money. So we want to get that going. So there's no need to wait. Andy Warner, my good friend with the ring, he's got it all spit and polished and ready to go. And you know, the guys that are gonna hang in there with us. The train will be leaving the station, and there's plenty of seats on it.
Awesome. And so last question is here, you know, because you did, I guess about a couple of years or like a year or so back, you actually did step away for a bit as part of a retirement. You came back. So the retirement didn't last too long, but do you have a time frame set for yourself on when you would like to retire as a promoter?
Well, like I said, I stepped back one time back in 1988. Brody got killed in 88. I stepped back for a year there.
Yeah.
And it was people, I'll be real honest with you, Tony Costa, Larry Matysik, my attorney at that time, 3 people who really influenced me into, I was out of about a year. And they influenced me to get back in it. That's how much Frank meant to me, meant to my business. I was devastated over that because he'd been with us the weekend before at the bar and restaurant that we had. And so that was a shocker. And I just thought it was over with. I really didn't want to do anything, but Tony was in my ear a lot about getting back into it. And Larry, here a while back, I had thought about doing it, and I got to say that I took the locker room out one evening for some little food and drinks, and over at Murphy's, a great place to go. If I can throw them a plug out there, hopefully they're allowed to be opened up, and GQ knows where that's at.
Yep.
But and I had all the intentions. In fact, had Drew Ebenhouse and Sean Vincent and Keith Smith and everybody that was there. I made this statement that I was really at the point where I thought I wanted to hang it up. And I got to tell you, when I sat there and heard comments from many of them, especially Drew, Sean Vincent, Ricky Cruz, all of them made it so humbling that I said, okay, they said, oh, if you made it this long, you can make it 50. And I said, well, I don't know about that, but we all know sooner or later it's going to happen. We all love doing what we're doing, and to put a time on it, I don't want to say that. I can tell you that in the right circumstances, what we have done for 47 years, I would love for my boys to follow in Dad's footsteps, but I think I wore them out growing up, being the ring boys and helping with the ring. I think if I would suggest that to them, they'd say, "Sorry, Dad, but we had enough of that." But right now, I enjoy it so much. I enjoy working with the guys, and as you know, being in it, you don't get to see the guys all the time. You may talk to them on the phone or on social media. But when you get them in the locker room and you see the camaraderie, and that's the one thing I'm so proud of in our locker room, there's not a lot of animosity. It's when they come in, the matchmaker or whoever's running the locker room knows that gives the assignments, and everybody gets right down to business. We have a little meeting before they go out, and then it's to go out to the fans. And the other reason is the fans. I got great fans. I mean, I got fans that's been coming to our shows for 40 years, and I love them. Jerry Bullion, the Mender family, people like that. John, Karen and Rob, and people like that just are diehard wrestling fans. And I know they go to MMWA, they go to the other shows. They are just die-hard wrestling fans, and by gosh, that's what we need to keep this thing going. But so just to put a time on it, my wife will let me know probably when it's time because she gets to listen to all my late night talks of the wrestling. And but guys like Dennis McCausey, Ron Powers, when him and I would get on a phone and talk for hours and hours, and or Larry when he was with us, or Tony, my wife would, you're doing what you love to do, and shy of working at my job day and night because I love being a public servant, helping people. And wrestling fits right in with that. I like the entertainment of seeing those fans when they walk out the door at night and they say, "Boy, you pulled a rabbit out of the hat again tonight. Just when we thought we had it figured out, you came up with something else." That makes it all worth it. But it can't be done. It can't be done without guys in that ring. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's I guess you really know. I guess we. And I even kind of, set a limit for myself as far as when I'm going to be active in the ring, when I'm going to hang him up and all that. And I have a goal set for myself. But then I think back, I'm like, do I really want to do that? I mean, if I still feel healthy enough, can I just keep going? And I guess our bodies and our minds and just the way that we handle our everyday life is going to let us know when we're pretty much done. But I know I know I'm far from mine, but
well, and what I tell some of the guys, just the other night, I had a conversation with one of my guys, and he's talking the same thing. And I said, just because you can't get in there and feel like you can do those bumps and take them and give them, there's always something. In this business, there's always something to do. You got a mind for it. I mean, when I interviewed Ron Powers a month ago on my show, I said, the $64,000 question, will you come back? And and he says, well, he says, my mind says I'd like to, but my body won't let me. But I know Ron well enough to know that he could still get in there and go today with the best of them. It's just the way it is. Big Daddy didn't think that he could come back and do a manager gimmick when we asked him to come back, and he did. And of course, when you had Big Daddy and Travis Cook on the same card together, boy, you had double trouble. Yeah, it's the only thing I needed was GQ, and then I'd have the trifecta.
Right. Oh man. Well, I'll tell you what. I think that's pretty much all we had. I mean, we're nearing about 3 hours when we actually went on, and I know GQ had a little bit of technical difficulties, and apparently he didn't make his way back unless he's still working on it. I don't know, but we are pretty much at the end point of this show, and I know that's getting late, but I want to thank you, greatly thank you very much for being part of this. We've had some great interaction here tonight, definitely some great stories, and like I said, I'm sure there's just a lot more to tell. It's just we wanted to kind of point on some points that maybe some others have not asked you, and but yeah, it just a lot of great stuff here tonight. And I know on behalf of GQ and myself, I want to thank you very much for joining us and obliging us with your time tonight. It was just really awesome to hear what you had to say.
Well, and I appreciate the invite. I hope I didn't kill your ratings, but like I said, keep up the good work. You guys are doing a good job. And just if there's one thing I can just say in leaving is just, guys, it's life is too short. It's wrestling. Don't take it serious, but you gotta protect what you work for, and whether it's coming together, but again, it's as I told you before we went on the air. Can I come to your house anytime I want to? Open your door, get in your ice box. Sit in your easy chair. Can I do that anytime I want to? You're going to tell me no. And the other thing you do is, it's like you put out a bowl of dog food and you invite all the dogs from the neighborhood. I guarantee you the hungry is going to survive. So, right. But I really appreciate the night, and if I can ever be of any help, just let me know.
Oh yeah. Awesome, Herb. Well, again, we thank you very much for that. And guys, that is going to wrap it up here for this evening. And once again, this has been episode number 24 of the Falls Count Everywhere podcast. I'm Rough Cut Rick Ruby. GQ is already gone, but we have been listening to the legendary promoter from St. Louis area, Mr. Herb Simmons. We thank you very much, guys, for coming out. And tune in next week. We're going to have another great show with the Irish Spike Hawk. Hell yeah. Guys, have a good night, and we will see you next week.